conservative and just plain right. Well, welcome to Tuesday. Is it Tuesday? I don't know what day this is. It's Tuesday. Taco Tuesday, we call it. Hit it, man.
More importantly, y'all know what today is, right? It's Taco Tuesday!
Yeah, it is. Speedy Gonzalez says so. Well, listen, I feel like I've been playing hooky, like I've been gone for a week. I've only gone for a day.
Well, you've been playing hooky. No, I'm just kidding.
It's not true. But thank you all very much for making welcome my friends Amy Beth Shaver and Allison Sinclair yesterday. They've had their own radio gig for a number of years down yonder in our nation's capital, our state's capital, and I just really appreciate them making time for us yesterday. That being said, I'm also glad to be back because it just felt weird. I mean, literally, when I'm not in the studio, sitting behind the microphone at a certain time, I feel like I'm doing something wrong.
Yeah, I mean, it's just become part of your routine like that.
Someone's going to track me down and say, "What are you doing?
Get behind that microphone."
Get behind that microphone." Anyway, glad to be back with you. We got a great show laid on for you. No guests today. I did not want to have guests today. I want to spend some time unpacking some things that are big. There's a lot of stuff happening right now, especially with regards to discussions on crime. We're gonna unpack that in a big way. But yeah, I got a whole triple dipper filled up with stuff. So hit it, man.
The Triple Dipper. 3 stories you've got to know.
That's right, the Triple Dipper. 3 stories, 3 themes, if you will, that you got to know as we run today's show. First out the gate, I'm just calling it Crime Busters. Crime Busters, baby. Listen, there ought to be a reality TV show about what it takes to actually fix crime in America and how liberals continue to scream about anything that makes them look like they're weak on crime, even though they are. We're going to talk about it. There's some major things happening around the nation right now, to include some major, I don't know, maybe catalyst moments. And I hate it, but the loss of a young Ukrainian refugee girl in Charlotte, North Carolina could very well become a catalyst moment. We'll see. That's number 1, Triple Dipper, Crime Busters. I'll talk about that one in great detail. Number 2, I talked last week in one of my monologues about the Appeal to Heaven flag. Remember that? Well, it's interesting. Yesterday, I decided to make that the name of the Dipper, Appeal to Heaven. And I did that because yesterday the president actually spoke at the Museum of the Bible in D.C., which is a cool place. I've been there. It's very cool. The Museum of the Bible, calling upon our nation to enter in a time of prayer. And I thought, that's just cool. And I got some great stories that surround that, and we'll talk about it. An Appeal to Heaven. That's number 2 on the Triple Dipper. And then number 3, I don't know if you've seen it, but Republicans in the U.S. Senate right now are about to pull what is often referred to as the nuclear option. The Democrats have become so belligerent, so recalcitrant, so dilatory that we almost have no choice but to go ahead and do what's called the nuclear option in order to get things moving. What does that mean? Well, procedurally speaking, what it basically means is Democrats have been blocking every single Trump nomination. They can hardly get anything done. They need U.S. attorneys and judges and all appointed, and the Democrats are blocking them for no other reason than just they can. Never mind the fact that we allowed Biden to have his appointees. No, they won't do it. So they're about to pull the nuclear option. Changes in the rules are going into effect even today. I'll tell you about that and all the machinations that it comes with it as number 3 on the Triple Dipper, the Senate nuclear option. All right, let me jump on into today's Rightside Way opening monologue, and I'll remind you guys that, as always, the Rightside Way brought to you by attorney Stan McDonald. Stan McDonald, a longtime practitioner of the law in North Alabama, a longtime conservative, and your daily sponsor of the Rightside Way. And I'll tell you more about Stan here momentarily. So I gotta start by saying I had an experience over the past few days that I did not expect. It was humbling, and it also really made me think. I did an interview on Fox News nationally this past weekend to discuss the Trump administration's military buildup in the Caribbean, right? So I was on Fox, and I'm talking about this specifically in the waters off of Venezuela. And I made note of the military history of the U.S. in the region and the current implications of Trump staring down the socialist dictator of Venezuela, El Presidente Nicolas Maduro. Maduro, the tyrant, Maduro, the ally of Russia and China, Maduro, the drug trafficker. In the course of the interview, I made the comment that while I don't believe that we're going to wind up having U.S. boots on the ground in Venezuela, that I do believe that Maduro is not long for office. I mean, even if his own people, I said, have to rise up and oust him. Well, Fox News posted my interview to their website, and a few hours later, an X account, Twitter, that is run by a guy who calls himself a Venezuelan journalist in exile. He took my interview, he translated it to Spanish, and he posted it again with a message that there are Americans who believe that Trump is right to oppose Maduro. Well, y'all, within 24 hours, that post was viewed in Spanish over 16,000 times with hundreds of reposts from people calling for freedom for the Venezuelan people. Now, I'm not saying we should jump feet first into a South American country and conduct regime change. I'm not. And by the way, neither is the president. What I am saying, though, is I was really struck by the fact that my short interview was grabbed by a bunch of people, taken in their language, and made some kind of a moment of hope. What I'm saying right now is there are people around this world who still look to the United States of America as what people like John F. Kennedy and Ronald Reagan and George H.W. Bush and our early American colonial patriots called a city on a hill. That's what we are, a city on a hill. The phrase actually comes from Scripture. Jesus said in Matthew 5:14, "You are the light of the world, and a city on a hill cannot be hidden." Honestly, that's what so many around this world still think of when they picture America. That place where freedom can be found, where rights are enshrined in our founding documents, where votes are supposed to matter, where generally speaking, you can live free, and that freedom is actually contagious. It is. And people like Maduro in Venezuela, they suppress their people because they fear the idea of a free society that can pick and choose its leaders. Former Colorado Governor Bill Owens, he once said, "Freedom is contagious, and that's why despots fear it so much." What a great quote. Now, when I say that people in oppressed countries around the world have an idealized image of America, I mean it. Look, I've walked on ground where tyranny was freshly overthrown. I've watched as people who had never known what it was like to have any measure of self-determination suddenly found themselves just blinking in the light of a whole new day where their oppressors were one day there and the next day gone. I had a farmer in Afghanistan tell me once, as we talked about what his family had endured under the Taliban, this farmer told me how it felt and how much he appreciated that the U.S. had actually brought freedom. He said to me with a straight face, he said, for 7 years, the Taliban were in power and it did not rain. And then the Americans came and it rained. Y'all, he believed that. He believed that with his whole heart and mind, that his ability to live and scratch out a living in the hard ground of a war zone was somehow made better because the city on a hill sent its people there. But it usually starts with a voice, to be honest. It's not about boots on the ground. Sometimes it's just about a voice. When the dark clouds of government overreach are weighing down on people's lives, just one person, just one, who's willing to step out and risk their own security and stand in the face of tyranny, well, it actually inspires other people, which then inspires others, which then cascades. And the calls for freedom can be far more contagious than any virus. Sometimes it's a word, sometimes it's a writing, sometimes it's an action or a call to arms, sometimes just a look in a crowd where one person gives another person the look that says, "I got your back, let's do it." And I got to tell you, there's images that come to my mind when I think about that, about the idea of freedom being contagious, like the one man who stood in front of a tank in the center of Tiananmen Square in China, just stood there, galvanized a whole world. Or like history tells us that Andrew Jackson, who rallied up a ragtag group of militia and buccaneers and townsfolk to defend New Orleans near the end of the War of 1812, he soundly defeated a far superior British force. He is quoted as having said, "We are the freeborn sons of America, the citizens of the only republic now existing in the world, and the only people on earth," he said, "who possess rights and liberties and property which they dare call their own." Jackson's words and his actions in that campaign actually fired up a nation, propelled him to the presidency. Because, yeah, sometimes it's the common man who rises up. Other times it's a leader who speaks over the fears of his people, provides reassurance and confidence. But it can be absolutely contagious. Isn't it amazing how one person can say or do just the right thing and turn a tide of depression into an inspiring moment? Like, what about Menachem Begin? Menachem Begin, the leader of Israel, 1948, the fledgling nation of Israel was preparing to be attacked by the Arab armies. And Menachem Begin, he spoke to the Israeli people on the radio. He prepared them for war with the Arabs, a frightened and terrified nation of people who were just 3 years after the Holocaust. But Begin was able to muster up the national collective courage, and he brought strength to his people with his words. He said this, he said, "We shall go our way into battle, and we shall be accompanied by the spirit of millions of our martyrs. And in this battle, we shall break the enemy, and bring salvation to our people, tried in the furnace of persecution, thirsting only for freedom and for righteousness and for justice. And they won, by the way. And I got to mention, too, what about Great Britain's prime minister in World War II, Sir Winston Churchill? Man, responsible for delivering inspiring speeches that rallied the pride of an entire nation as they were being bombed relentlessly by the Nazis. He led a tired, bruised nation into victory over tyranny, and his speeches to the nation are still considered epic. His blood, toil, tears, and sweat speech is like the stuff of legends. At one point in that speech, Churchill said, actually, he thundered, "You ask what is our policy? He said, I can say it is to wage war by sea and by land and by air, with all our might, with all the strength that God can give us, to wage war against a monstrous tyranny never surpassed in the dark, lamentable catalog of human crime." Look, we may not be in that deep of a trial right now as a nation. We're not personally. There's no tanks and bombs and no foreign enemies marching on our land. But we have seen, by the way, an ever-increasing attempt to dissuade the people of this great country from actually exercising their rights, the same rights that are enumerated on their behalf in our Constitution. There are good folks like the Colorado cake baker who said no in the face of overwhelming liberal opposition, and he inspired people everywhere. There's a little group of nuns who decided they'd rather go to court than to be forced to purchase medical plans that violated their religious conscience, and they won. There's a group of parents who spoke out at a school board meeting once in Loudoun County, Virginia. They created a movement that's still going across the nation right now. They changed the political landscape in their state, I guarantee you. You know why? Because freedom is contagious. Freedom is absolutely the most contagious, infectious, wide-ranging, system-changing, inherently pleasing, gut-wrenching, viral, liberating plague known to man. And we don't avoid it. We seek it. And tyrants hate it when we do. Because once it starts, whew, it goes like a wildfire, y'all. It's like a pandemic of freedom. Just a pandemic of freedom. But it all starts and gets preserved by making sure that the city on a hill stays intact, that the foundation stays solid, that the rights and the principles and the faith and the values that we were founded on are still able to be seen from a distance, because that's what a city on a hill is about. That's why Jesus used that as a reference or an analogy, because it conjures up the mental image of a weary traveler slogging their way along as the day gets close to its end, and then off in the distance, the traveler can see the lights from the city on a hill, and they know that refuge is close. In 1980, Ronald Reagan gave a great speech, one of many. It was the night before the election that actually swept him into office for the first time as president. And he addressed the nation as somebody who believed that we are everything I just described, and that he wanted to serve in such a way as to preserve it. And in that speech, the night before the election in 1980, Reagan said this. He said, talking about D.C., he said, "Visitors to that city on the Potomac do not come as white or black or red or yellow. They are not Jews or Christians, conservatives or liberals. They are not Democrats or Republicans. They are Americans, awed by what has gone before, proud of what for them is still a shining city on a hill." So hear me when I say it. That's who we are. That's how the world sees us in so many ways. That's why people in Venezuela are encouraged. That's why the Afghan farmer told me that we actually brought the rain. That's why the United States has to be preserved. That's why it means everything to keep the shining city on a hill shining. It means everything to keep it that way. And that's a wrap for the Rightside Way. Well, I just enjoyed putting that one together, I'm going to be honest with you. I got all up in my feels doing that one, but y'all, I'm going to tell you right now, I mean it when I say it. We are a city on a hill, and we can get frustrated with our politics, and we can get irritable with the way things are in our culture, but the reality is the rest of the world still looks at us and goes, my God, I want some of that. And that's who we are. Bill Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back. That in 2004. It was my second deployment. It's hard to believe. I've already been home now for 21 years from my second deployment in the global war on terror. That tells you how old I am. My daughter, Caitlin, and my son-in-law are up there running sound for the live stream, but Caitlin can speak to what it was like for me being gone, just like boom, boom, back to back. Started off the war in Afghanistan, initially riding horses on a small team in the middle of nowhere, and then came home, and I wasn't even home a year, and I immediately deployed again and spent all of 2004 in Baghdad. And aside from combat operations and all the things we had going on, part of my job was to help this new thing called democracy get started. And y'all, it was amazing to be in a place where people had no idea
what self-determination was. I thought I appreciated my vote before I went over there. My dad had run for office at one point when I was younger. I had always voted. I'd never missed a vote. I liked democracy. I was always a Republican. And then I went to a situation where no one had any idea what self-determination was. Not a lick. I'm talking about Saddam Hussein, when he took power. He took power. You were not allowed to own a car if the Ba'ath Party hadn't decided you were okay to own a car. That's why there were so few gas stations in Baghdad, which is crazy. A city of 5 million people. It dawned on me one day, there's no gas stations anywhere when no one had a car, unless you were approved. Schools were approved and you could go if you could. There were so many things in life, the minutia of life was so controlled, and yet they had no say in who controlled it, not a lick. We may think once in a while that we get frustrated with our politics. I'll be honest with you, we still got it better than huge swaths of the world. I tell people as an attorney, I tell people when I'm talking to them and they're a new jury, I'll tell them, I said, you don't understand the value of your position as a juror. You are the arbiter of the facts. People around this world have no respect for the rule of law, but we sit in a room where we have the right to a trial by jury of our peers. And that's you. And I tell the jury that. I will say the same thing to you as voters. What we do in our country is largely determined on what you guys determine as voters. And I don't care whether it's dog catcher or president of the free world. The reality is that vote matters. So I had this experience in 2004. Aside from combat ops and all the things that were going on, the craziness, part of my job wound up having me interact with what was called the DAC, the District Advisory Council, which in essence was the very first ever city council in Baghdad in anyone's memory. These were people elected by their various districts and neighborhoods to represent them and to give them some measure of a voice. And I went to a meeting once, and I got to tell you, this was no small thing. These guys were serving. And while I was there, I got pretty tight with several of them. One of them was a man by the name of Sheikh Majid. The other was a Dr. Abdul Qadim. And they were actually the chair and vice chair of this DAC that I worked with. Sheikh Majid was assassinated. And Dr. Qadim barely survived an assassination attempt, but he was never the same. He was not able to return to the council. But at one point, I was at a meeting where they were both still active, and we're sitting there, and I still carry a picture around with me a lot. And that picture shows this group of men sitting at a table. It's kind of an innocuous little picture. It doesn't look like much. It's just a guy sitting at a table. But I took that picture right after something happened. We're sitting there, and somebody on the council and my interpreter's on the side kind of whispering to me what it is they're saying. And I'm sitting in the back of the room as an advisor. And my interpreter says, sir, they've just mentioned that apparently so-and-so on the council has resigned his position because his family was threatened. They have a vacancy on the council. So they talked among themselves for a minute. And then somebody said, I believe that we're allowed to nominate a replacement. Well, the whole room got like, I mean, it looked heavy. And Dr. Qadim, as chair of the council, looked in the back, and myself and my battalion commander were sitting there, Lieutenant Colonel Sexton, and he says, Colonel Sexton, what do you think? And I'll never forget this. My boss, Colonel Sexton, goes, it's your council. Well, then we will take nominations, says Dr. Qadim. And some names came out, and then somebody else says, I believe we're supposed to vote. It was an alien moment for them, y'all. It was. And so I'm sitting there watching, and I'm thinking, and my first thought was, what are they? Oh, they used to be killed for this kind of stuff. They just had a guy who quit because his family was being threatened. And now they're talking about voting again.
And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid, conservative, and just plain right. Just saving the world one soundbite at a time. I'm just sitting there talking to JP, and it dawned on me that's my bump music.
Yeah, we're doing a radio show.
Okay, fine. I'll do a radio show. Yeah. Hey, by the way, I did miss y'all yesterday. Thank you so much again for taking good care of Amy Beth and Allison. I heard they were a hoot. I came in for like the last 20 minutes and they didn't even let me on the mic. They just let me stand over there on the side and watch the show.
Well, they were too busy dealing with Kareem, and then of course you had the hot flash news that Allison had to do, which was.
I will be honest, there has never been a hot flash news on this show before.
There hasn't. I think that's an interesting idea, though.
I am questioning your testosterone levels today. How are you doing? You all right?
I'm good. Jeff from Indiana called in to save me. He said, so yeah, I'm good. Even though I was asked about the Miss America competition, and as if they assumed I'd watched it.
Oh,
I did not. I have to say.
Did you not?
I did not. No.
I thought all red-blooded young men watched the Miss America competition.
Ravens Bills was on. I was watching that.
I'm with you, bud. All right. Hey, listen, I got to tell you real quick about attorney Stan McDonald. Yeah. So attorney Stan McDonald is a partner at the law firm of Wilmer and Lee up yonder in Huntsville, a 30-year veteran in the practice of law in North Alabama. And I'm going to tell you right now, Stan has not only been the kind of guy who can advocate for your legal needs for many years, but he's also been long time in the trenches, in the mix, in the fray on all the conservative policies and politics that Rightside ruffians care about. So yes, indeed, Stan McDonald, he has represented his clients as an attorney in literally thousands of real estate transactions over the years. He knows how to stand up for you in any local, state, or federal court. I like to say if Stan McDonald is on your side, yeah, that you will have no greater friend. Likewise, your enemies would have no greater foe. So here's the bottom line. You need an attorney in North Alabama. I'm going to give you his number. You ready? That's attorney Stan McDonald. The law firm is Wilmer and Lee. He's an America First family man, and the phone number is 256-479-3020. That's Stan McDonald, 256-479-3020. And tell him you heard about it on Rightside Radio. I would appreciate that very much. And oh, by the way, no representation made. The quality of legal service is bad. Not at all. Why would I ever say that? It's not bad. It's good. He's advertising on Rightside. How can it be bad? He's a good guy. All right. I got some text messages already going. Text lines are open. 833-687-4448. That's 833-68-RIGHT. I saw Allie from Athens came in already. She says, after our praise and worship team finished singing in Saddam's former fishing lodge, a teenage interpreter got up and thanked the coalition through the lump in his throat for invading his country. Said, later, I had the great pleasure of leading him to faith in Christ, and these are things I will take with me into eternity. Wow, Allie, what a memory that is. By the way, if you've not read Allie's book, you need to. For those who don't know, our friend who calls in and texts in and has been on the show before, Allie from Athens, has her own book called Ballad for Baghdad. She spent 3 years of her life taking care of troops in Baghdad. Good stuff. All right, listen, we're coming right back. I got more text messages and I got lots of stuff. Y'all stay tuned. We will be right back.
To put somebody else in the position of being threatened. And I'll never forget this. They called for the vote, and Dr. Khatami called for the vote. And by a show of hands, and my interpreter's telling me what he's saying, and the hands began to go up. And I swear, it's almost like the hands were going up while they sat lower in their seats. And he counted the vote, and he goes, well, then so-and-so shall join the council. And all of a sudden, every one of the men on that council, like 12 of them, they started laughing and clapping. It was this sense of relief. It was this sense of we just did something, and they were really excited. And I'm sitting there thinking that looked like something you and I would do every other day of the week. I mean, how many times have we been to a meeting? Who wants to do so and so? I do. Who's again? I ain't doing that. We do that thing on a regular basis. They had no basis of reality though to compare to. In fact, for them, it was potentially under threat of death. And a month later, Sheikh Majid was dead. We have no idea what it means to have this right of self-determination and self-governance and the ability to vote for a candidate. I say all that to say that while it's also unique in Western society for us to have that, it is also absolutely 100% something we should never take for granted. That's why it's so important that we should choose our candidates and choose them wisely. I would say choose them prayerfully. I would also say choose them judiciously. Don't just allow anybody else to walk in and be a candidate. At the same time, everybody should have the opportunity to want to be a candidate. Does that make sense? Everybody should have the right to run for office. Every one of you should have a right to say whether they should or not. And we should all be a part of that process. Because there are people in this world who still die because they just want self-determination. I watched it firsthand. At the end of my tour, I came home in late '04, and it was a rough year. Lost several great guys in my unit, and I came home appreciative more of what it meant to be home. But close to the end of my tour, I went back to meet with the DAC, the district council again. And I gave them my goodbyes. And I still have on my shelf just like a handwritten certificate that was in kind of cryptic English because they was not their first language. And it said, like, owing to the gratitude that we have for you these days, that kind of thing. And it's signed by Dr. Cottom. But as we finished our meeting, I told them, I said, there will be a day when your children will look in their history books at school and your names will be in it and you will be called heroes. Because you stood up. Because you said, we'll do that thing that people will kill us for because it's really, really important. We're not under threat of death here. I mean, Trump took a round of the ear, but that's rare, right? Generally speaking, we expect to have people run for office. And we expect to be allowed to run if we want to, if we qualify. And we expect, all by the way, for people to vote. And we expect not to have our vote curtailed. We expect our vote to be counted. That's the beauty of where we live. It absolutely is. And I hate the fact that it took me going to war to gain that level of appreciation for it. But it did. And I'm forever grateful. And to this day, I still count Dr. Cottom as somebody who I would love to see again if he's still alive. I have no idea.
You're going to enjoy this one. I just had a conversation with Brian Dawson from 1819 News, president and CEO of an up-and-coming company that is making a huge splash in the state of Alabama. But listen, you're going to be amazed by his personal story. Brian Dawson, you talk about rags to riches. You talk about somebody who's been redeemed. You're talking about a guy who is looking at life in prison, who now has an amazing family, an amazing life, an amazing testimony of how the Lord has redeemed him, and who is, oh, by the way, making a huge difference in our state. Stay tuned. Just Right podcast coming up next. Yeah. Hey, all you Rightside ruffians out there, you are listening to Rightside Radio, solid conservative, just plain right. We are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid conservative, just plain right. Just covering down on some major ground across the Southeast US of A. Y'all, I'm talking about this show. This show goes like from Huntsville back over to Chattanooga. I'm talking about from Tuscaloosa back over to Gadsden. I mean, all the way down to that loveliest little village on the plains we call Auburn, straight across the line from there to what we call, once again, Fort Benning. And then big old patches of North Georgia, Mississippi, all thrown in just for good measure. And all that is just the radio. That's just you radio people. Thank you very much. And then there's all y'all out there in the whole wide world going the World Wide Web, places like X, YouTube, Rumble, Facebook, and our website, rightsidemedia.org. And you live stream the show. You can look in right now and see the pretty blue shirt that I'm wearing. There you go, live streaming the show. And then you podcasters that catch it after the fact, listen, doesn't matter where you catch the show. We want you to know we appreciate it. We can see it. We can tell. We know the numbers. And it means the world to us that you do. So thank you very much for that. Lots of text already flowing in. 833-687-4448. That's 833-68-RIGHT. I got to tell you, JP, this morning I did send an email to Allison and Amy Beth.
Mm-hmm.
I asked if they got home in time to make sandwiches last night.
That was funny.
That may be a new viral joke moment. I don't know.
Yeah, they played it up. I think that's the right response.
That's the right response. What was it? What are they doing? Caleb with a K, is that what we're calling it?
Yeah, Caleb with a K.
Caleb with a K. Text line, Dave from Capshaw sends me something. What you got, Dave from Capshaw? Babylon B, Hunter Biden tells Dad he's going to need a new boat. Oh, that was the drug running boat that blew up.
That's good.
That is good. Jeff from Indiana says, Phil, I enjoyed your segment on Fox News. Thank you, brother. While I think it's very good for promoting the show to more of the conservative audience, it's still not as much fun as watching you troll liberals on CNN. Listen, I've been watching. By the way, I was supposed to go to CNN this Thursday and it got moved. So now I'm going the next week, I think. Anyway, bottom line is I'll be heading back up again soon. But they got the
budget to cancel flights.
Hey, those plane tickets we just paid a lot of money for. Don't worry about those.
Yeah, just a drop in the bucket.
Maybe they can. Maybe they got points. They probably got points out the yang.
Oh yeah.
Scott from Russellville says, Phil, thoroughly enjoyed your guest host yesterday until the last caller, even if I didn't get a sandwich.
Nice.
John from Huntsville says, Phil, spectacular monologue. Thank you, brother. Says also, did you hear that Apple is having an event to unveil their new iPhone 17? I don't care. By the way, I thought yesterday was one of the most entertaining shows ever. Well, John. All right. So John from Huntsville, I got to know, did you watch the Miss America competition?
Maybe he did.
Maybe he did. John C. from Madison. John C. from Madison says, with judges and prosecutors having no cash bail, can they be sued? Especially the ones that let the murderer out that killed the Ukrainian woman. No, and here's the deal. Judges don't establish the policies of no cash bail. That's a legislation rule. At the very least, it's going to be a local ordinance, very likely a legislation from their state legislature. So what I'm saying is judges oftentimes go weaker than they have to in the liberal venues. But when it comes to things like cashless bail or, no minimum sentencing, those are usually things that are creatures of statute or ordinance that are done by the legislative bodies that govern the area. So, yeah,
there has been a certain NGO. I haven't looked. I can't remember the name of it, but an NGO has been identified that was pushing for that exact policy in that same county that he was
pushing for no cash bail.
Mm-hmm. And I could do more digging into it, but somebody's got to be held accountable.
Well, I think one of his last crimes, because he had a rap. We're talking about the guy in Charlotte.
Yes,
the guy who killed the young Ukrainian refugee woman on the public transport in Charlotte, which we'll dig into more here in a minute. But I had heard that one of his most recent crimes, he was out on just a few $100 bond. It's like ridiculous. Like that's a nothing burger.
Yeah.
But yeah, cashless bail. And by the way, they will, I will say this, where judges do have flexibility is depending upon how the cashless bail situation is set up. If they say no cash bail for these kinds of crimes, then they're bound. If they say at the judge's discretion, they can do cashless bail, then the judge may or may not have had to do it. And so there's that. John from Huntsville, by the way, just checked in and says, believe it or not, Phil, I missed out on the Miss America pageant. But if I'd known about it, he said I definitely would have watched.
I'm sure.
Richard from Madison says, outstanding monologue, Colonel. Thank you, sir. Said, you made mention of many of the beacons of light who did very famous things to show their light, but I will not forget the neighbor who mowed my grass for me when I was recovering from knee replacement surgery, or the many who brought meals while my wife recovered from cancer surgery. We don't need to change the whole world. We can make a difference and be a light in our little corner and allow it to grow. God bless you. Richard, that's spot on, brother. Give that man some applause. That was outstanding, and he's right. You may not be able to change the world, but you can impact your little sphere of it, right? I agree with that. John from Pike Road. Hello, John from Pike Road. He says, can any of these judges let this guy in Charlotte walk, be held accountable, or do they have qualified immunity? They're going to have qualified immunity unless it can be shown. Here's the thing. Every state has their version of what Alabama calls a JIC, a Judicial Inquiry Commission. That's the group that holds judges accountable. So judges are not likely to ever be sued. Very rare you could ever find that to happen. What you can do, though, is have a judicial ethics complaint if you can show clearly that the judge abused their discretion in such a way as to knowingly cause harm. And I don't mean like abuse their discretion in just ruling the way you didn't like. That's different. Gave them 10 years instead of 12, whatever. But if you have a judge like the one up in, where was that? Minnesota? Where was the judge who took the illegal alien out the back door of a courtroom to avoid ICE?
Hannah Dugan from Minnesota.
Absolutely. How do you remember that? Absolutely. That woman right now, so basically she abused her position. She violated the law herself. There was nothing about that she had discretion to do. And so she's been removed from the bench and she's facing charges.
It was actually Wisconsin, but still.
Yeah. Wisconsin.
Yeah.
you were still better on it than I was. So there's your entry to you, John Pike Road. Look, we're going to talk about this at great length, but I will tell you that right now, even as I speak, that the U.S. Attorney for the Western District of North Carolina, a guy named Russ Ferguson, is standing. I mean, so Charlotte's in his district, and the Trump administration is not playing around. The U.S. Attorney's offices usually deal with things that are federal law, but in the absence of a state intervention on something, the federal government can insert itself if it sees grounds to do so. And what you're seeing right now, I believe, is a press conference that's happening on Fox News, not being covered on CNN, but on Fox News, where the U.S. Attorney for the Western District of North Carolina is announcing that they are launching a federal investigation because they believe that there will wind up being clear evidence that locals were not going to do anything. You know, one of the things that makes me the maddest about this situation, too, was, there's so many angles to dissect on this story, is that apparently this happened a couple of weeks ago. Did you know that?
Yeah. So
I didn't know anything. I thought it happened like 2 days ago.
If it wasn't, and this is not an over exaggeration, if it wasn't for Elon buying
Musk.
Twitter and
That's right.
X being the free beacon of media, really,
Yes.
this story would have not been covered at all, because
what the heck?
the AP didn't cover it. MSNBC didn't cover it. How convenient. Nobody covered it. And it wasn't until somebody on Twitter, I may have lived in the area and saw that, this video was released quietly and like, hey guys, have you heard about this?
Yeah.
Everybody's like, no.
Yeah.
A Ukrainian refugee was stabbed, unprovoked on a public train, and there's absolutely no coverage of it. It's amazing. And I think this shows just how much the tide has turned, that the left can't control the narrative with their mainstream media anymore, because places like X exist where stories like this are going to get out, and they've lost control of the narrative. And I think it's a big sign that the tide is turning. Unfortunately, it takes, a story like that to happen. Unfortunately, like I said,
yeah,
but I think we're now in an era where stuff like that can't just be put away. Like, oh, don't pay attention. Don't worry about that story.
But I'm gonna be honest with you, and I'll say this unabashedly. I really do believe that if this had been a young black girl or Hispanic girl stabbed by a white guy, we would have an entirely different press response. We'd have an entirely different socio-economic, cultural, demonstration going on, and the media would have been all over it.
Cities would be burning right now.
Exactly.
Like, there would be say her name protests. It would be an outrage. But now when the tables have turned, it's just a mentally ill guy. He had no rhyme or reason to do what he did. Leave him alone. This is not a racial issue. It's mighty convenient. But I do think they're losing the battle. I think most people have opened their eyes and be like, no, you can't just tell me not to work. Like, this is, my eyes aren't lying.
You can't even find an angle to help the guy. Yeah. And I don't mean I don't help the guy, but what I'm saying is, she's sitting there with her back to him, and you can watch the video, and she did nothing provocative. She didn't even look at him and say hello.
Nope.
She didn't give him a weird look that may have offended him. She didn't comment on his skin color. She didn't do anything. She came in quietly and sat down, going home from work. And I will say this. This is to me, first thing she did was get her phone out and put her head down on her phone. Mm-hmm. Y'all, listen, I told my daughter when she left for college, you keep your head on a swivel.
Yeah.
If you're out in a public sphere, walking out of a Walmart at night, you're going to the, wherever down the sidewalk, you just keep your head. You can look at your text messages later. Don't be in a position of not seeing it coming because you're head down in that phone. And I hate that she was, because she's sitting there literally just looking at her phone, and the guy stands up behind her, just stabs her in the neck. Yeah. And there's zero provocation.
She left a war scene in Ukraine, and her crime was thinking that she was safe enough in American City to not have to have her head on a swivel like that.
That's exactly right. And we're going to take a break right now. We're going to unpack this in great detail, but it's part of a broader narrative. We're going to talk about crime busting. We're going to talk about why it's so important right now that this debate is happening around the nation. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back.
1, 2, 3, hey!
Brian Dawson, how you doing?
Doing good.
Good. I got notes, dude.
All right.
I'm gonna start with a sort of introduction. All right.
Hit me.
You was born and raised outside the state of Alabama. Spent a lot of your time in Colorado Springs. Am I right?
Yep. And Derby, Kansas. Those are the two places.
Does that make you a carpetbagger if you came from out west?
No, west is not north.
Okay.
So yeah, carpetbaggers only come from the north.
All right. So you're allowed.
Yeah.
You were a white suburban kid.
Correct.
But your parents divorced when you're young. I know that. I
Mhm.
can relate to that. But then there's this period of your life. We'll talk about it in detail here in a minute. You've been very candid in some of the other interviews and discussions I've even had with you: crime, drugs, drinking.
Sure.
And then there became time when you were even involved with drug cartels and other things, and spent time in prison.
Yep.
At one point, I know you were facing like just short of 400 years potentially in prison. But then you found Jesus, you found a beautiful woman, you found purpose, you found parenthood like 7 times.
Correct.
And
It's the number of completion, Phil.
Oh, well, there you
They
go.
say perfection and completion.
Speaking of which, we're going to get to the initials of all your kids' names too, which is very cool. And then now it's radio, media, 1819 News, president and CEO. So let's start. All right, let's just talk about it.
Yeah.
Early childhood, dude. How did you get to where you went?
Yeah. So, interesting thing. I always like to, the more I learn about people and get to know people and everything, I realize who they are, where they're from, who their parents are matters a lot. And I also think, well, I'll just kind of go into that. So, my dad is from West Monroe, Louisiana. He is a swamp redneck. He grew up with Phil Robertson.
Duck Dynasty.
Duck Dynasty. Okay.
Yeah.
Phil was about 7 years my dad's senior, and so Phil was the camp counselor at Camp Chioka in Louisiana. And so, my dad was like 10 and Phil was like 17 at the summer camp or whatever. But my grandma, Memu, as we call her, Betty Dawson, taught Sunday school with Miss Kay for 30 years at Whites Ferry Road Church of Christ in West Monroe, Louisiana. So I say all that because it's neat on one hand that my family is close with their family or whatever, but also to give you, like, everybody knows the Robertsons and the swamp redneck thing, right? Like, they're swamp rednecks with money. But prior to them having money, there was a saying in West Monroe that the only people that were more poor than the Dawsons was the Robertsons. Okay, and the Dawsons was po, like they were super poor. Okay, I would joke and say
They changed that over time.
yeah, so they did. My dad not so much. That's okay though. Went the middle class route, but my dad, swamp redneck from Louisiana. Grew up, I always say, back when poor people were skinny, had to hunt for food, garden, like, so that's that side of my family. And then on the other side, there's my mom. My mom, and we'll kind of get into a little bit more of her background later in the story as it's pertinent, but she was the daughter of a state senator in Colorado, Colorado Springs specifically. And so my grandfather was a state senator. He ran for governor. He ended up running for Congress against Joel Heffley in Colorado. That was the only politics I was around for where all that happened before I was born, except for the run for Congress. And he has a country club background, right? And so you mix this swamp redneck with this country club, and this is where you get this amazing pedigree that sits before you.
Had this sort of Romeo and Juliet feel to it.
Yeah, I guess so. But that I really do think that plays a lot into who I am and how I go about things. But for better or for worse. But yeah, so they couldn't have been more different, and they got divorced when I was 2, right? Like who didn't see the writing on the wall with that one? So they got divorced when I was 2. Courts put me with my mom. That's kind of the knee-jerk reaction of the court system, at least it was back then. I don't think it's changed that much now. The knee-jerk reaction is give kids to mom. And had they have done any type of due diligence whatsoever and looked into the situation, they would have seen that was not the best place for me. And so when I was 2 years old, boom, I'm now living with my mom, seeing my dad every other weekend. And
where were y'all living then?
This was Colorado Springs. Okay. Yep. And so my mom, God bless her, I love her. She did the best she could with what she had, right? And so I've worked through a lot of unforgiveness with my mom and with my dad, but just forgiving them and me thinking, oh, I've forgiven them, but it's like, no, really. And then once you've forgiven them, you can actually see the appreciation that they did everything they possibly could. Now that I have kids, I see. But my mom had a very rough childhood, though she was from country club, lineage. She was sexually abused as a child. She, had all kinds of abuse, and just horrible. And, so she had a lot of trauma in her life that she never dealt with. And so I'm living with her, and the solution to every problem that she has is another man. And so I ended up with like 5 or 6 stepdads. I lost count. Okay. Now I will say, I know there's no way you haven't seen the movie or read the book, Hillbilly Elegy.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so that was my life to a T with my mom. That was my life to a T. We watched.
And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid, conservative, and just plain right. Just making common sense like a superpower. Hey, so I'm doing this section on crime busters. Let me frame the issue in a broad way, all right? First of all, I think it needs to be just reaffirmed that, in my opinion, providing for the common defense is not something that is just at the national level. When any mayor of any small town, when any councilman, when any judge, whether it be a municipal judge or a local magistrate or a state circuit court judge or whatever, when a DA, when a U.S. attorney, when any of them are sworn into office, they swear for the most part the same oath. At the state level, they might add to support and defend the Constitution of the state of Alabama and of the United States of America. I swore that oath when I swore in as a state senator. I did. When you swear that oath, you were swearing to the things that are contained within those documents. And within those documents, you have a provision that says to provide for the common defense. Providing for the common defense to ensure domestic tranquility is a clear indication that you're not just there to make life easy for criminals. What you're doing is ensuring domestic tranquility, providing for the common defense. We're talking about law enforcement. We're talking about the order and discipline of society. We're talking about being a nation of laws. That is not just about armies fighting foreign countries. That is not just about securing our southern border. That's about making the streets of Birmingham, Alabama safe. That's about making the train system around Charlotte safe. That's about making the streets of Chicago safe. That's about the reasonable expectation that if you walk your dog in a park in Auburn, Alabama, you won't be murdered. Fox News picked up a story that just happened over the weekend. Horrible story out of Auburn, Alabama. A former Auburn University professor was killed while walking her dog on Saturday at a local park. So apparently, some repeat offender, a guy named Harold Rashad Dabney III, 26 years old, attacked a 59-year-old former veterinary professor at Auburn named Julie Schnuel, who was found dead in a wooded area of Kiesel Park in Auburn. She apparently had a regular routine of walking and her dog and jogging through Kiesel Park, and he murdered her Saturday, stole her red Ford F-150, and has now been caught. This happened right here. Statement from the university. She was a cherished educator, a mentor, and a colleague whose dedication to her students and passion for veterinary medicine left a lasting impact on Auburn. So that being said, you look at it and you realize, story from 1819 News, the man who was arrested, Harold Dabney III from Montgomery, had previous charges in Virginia. Really? Yes. Not his first run-in with the law. Jail records show Dabney was arrested in Virginia Beach, Virginia, charged with possession of a sawed-off shotgun, charged with 2 counts of, he's now charged with 2 counts of capital murder and 1 count of murder during a robbery and 1 count of murder during a kidnapping. According to court documents, Dabney's father was also no stranger to the law. He was arrested multiple times for crimes ranging from drug trafficking to robbery. All this to say, we're looking at a guy who had records in other places, who the system apparently allowed to keep moving around, and we now have apparently a loved local citizen and professor at Auburn who died just walking her dog in a local park.
Yeah, it's not just blue cities. It can happen in Auburn, Alabama.
That's exactly
too.
Right.
And it's so unfortunate. And if this story of the Ukrainian girl hadn't blown up literally like a day or two before, this Auburn story could very well be getting the same publicity nationwide and it's the same thing of somebody not doing anything wrong, just simply walking their dog and just gets murdered for no reason. It's the same. I mean, the girl just walking on the train, sitting down, not doing anything wrong, just murdered for no reason.
And I will say too that while she was murdered in Auburn, he came from Montgomery, which is a blue city, and his prior crimes were in Virginia, which is a purple state.
Mm-hmm.
But let's take a look. I mean, right now, I did a piece this morning on my social media. I do it every morning. I do one I call the Thoughts on the Morning Drive, where I pick a topic and I spend about a minute and a half unpacking a topic real quick while I'm driving, and I post my thoughts. This morning, I posted it on the fact that I believe that Democrats are walking into what I call a Trump trap right now. They are. They're walking into a Trump trap. There is nothing they can say or do that benefits their position on crime, because Democrats are notoriously weak on crime. They are. They're weak on sentencing. They're weak on bail. They're weak on prosecution. They're weak on defunding the police. And they're weak on the results that come, therefore, in those cities that have the high crime rates but have blue leadership. So that being said, I'm looking at this entire situation right now, and I'm saying sooner or later, Democrats have got to recognize, you would think, that they've walked into a Trump trap. The very fact that the Trump administration right now is going so zealously and affirmatively after the issue of crime in American cities is putting the Democrats on their heels. You know why? Because number one, either A, they have to accept his help, which is like saying, I can't do it without you, and they hate that. Or did I say A? B, is it one or two, or is it A or B?
Either way.
B.
2A,
okay.
2B.
It's B. So B, the next thing is they wind up having Trump come into their city, and they have to resist because it's Trump, which makes them look like they are favoring the idea of keeping crime rates where they are. Or C, he comes in, he actually gets something done, which is B and C can go together. He actually gets something done, crime rate goes down, and it makes them look feckless because he quickly proves, you know what? You didn't need, new laws. You needed a new leader. And I came in and I fixed it. Look at the crime rate going down in Washington, D.C. There is no denying that he has made a difference by taking swift and assured action. Now, how you do that matters. He's got to work within the parameters of the law. But being a crime buster right now, listen, he's fixing the southern border. He's fixing economic issues. He's fixing foreign affairs. Why not? Apparently he can do more. And he's working right now to be a crime buster in the United States. And I'll tell you more about some of the whys and wherefores when we get back. Y'all stay tuned.
Movie, and my mother and I were like, this is like maybe 6 months ago, we watched the movie
Together?
No. But I mean, I watched it. I was a wreck. My wife's looking at me. My oldest son, who's watched it with us, is like, "What's wrong with you?" And I'm like, it was a wreck. And I told my mom about it. My mom watched it. And she's like, "Oh my gosh," it was like PTSD watching, because it was so on point with that 2 to 10 years with my mom. And I always make the joke, me and JD Vance are the same person, except JD Vance, he got into the Marines and went to Yale, and I got into drugs and went to jail. But other than that, same person. But yeah, and so when I was that went on, watching my mom get drunk, taking pharmaceutical drugs, I watched her get beat by some of the men that she was with. Just not good formative years from 2 to 10, right? And so by the time I'm 10, I get into a big fight with my mom, and she, despite many court battles for my dad to get custody of me that he continued to lose, my mom just let go and said, "You can go live with your dad." And so when I was 10, I went and moved with my dad, and he was living in Wichita, Kansas. He worked at Cessna for the bulk of his career in Wichita, Kansas.
So I got to tell you, and sometime I'll tell you my whole story, but I didn't wind up in jail, but I was headed there.
Yeah.
Parents divorced when I was young, lived with my mom, did not respond well to multiple marriages. Mom finally gave me the ultimatum as we had a big blow up. She sent me to live with Dad, who, by the way, was living in London, England, as an Army officer. And so I like to say God had to give me a 3-year timeout away from everything that I was used to for me to find him.
Yeah.
Of course, you had a 384-year timeout coming.
Potentially, yeah.
So let me ask you, you live with your dad. I researched before I sit down with you, and I'm watching other interviews you've done and stuff. And you said in one case that your dad's level of discipline and household, management was more what you needed, but you still wound up going down some roads.
Sure.
So you were, and I got to say,
when going through all the news stories and things, your mugshot came up at some point.
A bunch, yeah.
And you were just a normal looking high school dude. I mean, you didn't have like body piercings and face tats, and you weren't doing gang signs in the mugshot. You just looked like a high school football player, which you were. Am I right?
Yeah.
But you also had this sideline gig of doing things that got you in big trouble.
Yeah. No, I'm an all in guy. Whatever I'm into, I'm all into it, and that's just the way I'm wired, and it was no different than that. And so, going to the structure that my dad provided, but me still falling, I think that was a great tee up. I've never thought about it in those terms, and it actually makes a lot of sense. So, I'm 10. I move in with my dad. He's still not a Christian to this day. So if you're listening, pray for my dad. But he put a roof over my head. He got up every day at 4:30 in the morning and went to work. He showed up to my football games. We ate dinner every night around the table. Okay. He was what he was supposed to be as a father, and he didn't have a father. His dad abandoned them, his siblings. So he never had a dad. And so the gaps that he was filling in were those real basic gaps that he completely lacked, which was the providing, the protecting, those type of things. And so he generationally fixed that, that basic blocking and tackling gap that a father is supposed to provide. But some of the areas where I'd say, and I don't mean this disparagingly, where he fell short, he's not a real good communicator where he can sit down and say, son, let me talk to you about manhood. Son, let me talk like that. Those weren't his things. He showed up and he did what he was supposed to do. And very, very grateful that I had the time with him that I did. It definitely shaped and molded me. But when from 2 to 10, which they call formative years, those are formative years, right? And your formative years are not very formative. You carry baggage. And so I'm with my dad in this structure, carrying that baggage. And so I would get straight A's on the report cards, and I thrived in that structure, and I did good in sports. But underneath, I was angry. And my stepmom would always tell me, she's like, you're so angry. Why are you so angry? And she didn't understand. And I was angry at the world. And I was never really comfortable in my own skin. I had a lot of insecurity issues. And the only time I ever felt comfortable in my own skin is when I drank and did drugs. And so I drank and did drugs a lot.
Sort of a self-medicating kind of thing?
I definitely think it was a self-medicating thing. And once I kind of dove into that, I became the life of the party. I created a fake ID. I've always been somewhat, innovative. I learned how to create a fake ID, and then I could go get everybody alcohol. So I was like the coolest guy, in school. I could go get everybody booze and, party. But like everybody else would like party and go home and be fine. I would drink to the point of blacking out and not remember what I did. And that would happen 2 or 3 times a week, right? Like I was like a wild party animal. And then that went on to the point where I started to do drugs. And same thing, whatever I do, I do it all the way. And that happened there.
But you didn't do it. You were selling them too, right?
Yeah. And so how it started is, a little bit of weed, selling a little bit of weed, whatever. And then I would experiment with a little bit of cocaine or methamphetamines or ecstasy or whatever. And in that experimenting phase, I was still living in a suburb of Wichita called Derby, Kansas, with my dad. And
I got siblings, by the way.
So I've got from my mom, I have a brother who has a different dad.
Okay.
And he's Brad, and he's 2 years, 2 months, 2 days older than me. Anyway, probably not pertinent to the story, but it's interesting. And then I have a stepbrother. When my dad remarried, he remarried a woman, my stepmom, who had a son that was my exact age. So we were in the same schools together growing up.
Okay, wow, yeah.
Yeah. And he was also into partying and doing things, and also found himself in prison at some point in his life. So, I always want to go down rabbit trails, and it's like, I'm not going to rabbit trail, I promise. So that experimenting with some of those more illicit drugs, I snuck out one night to do that, and I came home after sneaking out thinking that because what I would do is I would sneak out, my bedroom would be shut, my dad would just get up and go to work. Well, he, for whatever reason that morning, needed something, and so he came in my room, and I wasn't in there. He's like, So I got busted sneaking out. And he took me to get a drug test, and I peed hot for every single thing on the drug test. And he was like, oh, wow. And so we kind of locked horns over that. And he said, you need to quit football and go to rehab, which is a really big deal. My team ended up 6A in Kansas, as big as it gets. They don't have 7A there. Yeah. And we were predicted to be the 6A state champs, or at least going to state.
What position?
I was defensive end, and they were going to move me to nose tackle that year. which was really interesting. I was like 225 and ran a 4.840, but they wanted me inside. Anyway, I won't get into that, but yeah. So that was my, I was really, really excited about my senior year, years and years of playing football, wanted to do that. And he's telling me I got to quit to go to rehab.
You just said solid, conservative, and just plain right. Well, welcome to hour number 2 on a Taco Tuesday. I cannot believe we're already through hour number 1. I don't even know where it went. Who took it? What happened to it? It's gone.
Don't know. Magic trick.
I got Brian from Decatur checking in on the text lines. He says, if you place all the Democrats in America on an island vacation, violent crime rate in this country would drop 90 to 95%. We're sending them all to the Dominican Republic for an all-inclusive opportunity.
It's sad, but it's true.
There you go. So I'm in this number 1 of the Triple Dipper, Crime Busters. Listen, I mean, right now, the screen, the CNN is ignoring it. But the CNN is talking about whether or not the White House got the jobs numbers right. Meanwhile, on the right side of my screens, I'm watching high-profile cases with repeat offenders being talked about on Fox News. I've got a piece here from the Populous Times. I hold it in my calloused former paratrooper hands. Populous Times, Dateline yesterday. Another weekend of deadly shootings swept across Chicago, leaving at least 5 people dead, 10 others wounded by Sunday afternoon. Listen, hear me when I say this. I was in Baghdad in 2004 during the Shia uprising. It was the early stages of the war. The Mahdi militia was blowing stuff up on a regular basis. We didn't have 5 people die and 10 others wounded in a weekend. That was a war zone. And we weren't losing that many on a regular basis. You're watching right now as one of the greatest cities in the world, Chicago, the city of the big shoulders, the Windy City, right here, had literally had so many shootings. And that's not just, I think there were 46 shootings, if I'm not mistaken. 5 people dead, 10 wounded in one weekend in Chicago. This is last weekend. And this is after all the discussion about crime. It's not like, hey, that thing that we started talking about, this is what happened last year. Now that we're talking about it, it's getting better. No, they're talking about it now and it's happening anyway. Authorities report shootings began late Friday night, continued into Sunday morning, with incidents spread across multiple neighborhoods. Victims range in age from 15 to 44 years old. And this goes on from there. Last weekend, oh my God, how about this? The shootings followed 2 previous weekends of high casualties in Chicago. Get this one. You ready? Last weekend, weekend before last, 58 people were shot in Chicago in one weekend. 58, 8 killed. The weekend before that, 6 were killed, 27 were wounded. Y'all, in 3 weekends, let's do the math here. Hang on, what do we got? Do the math. Oh my gosh, math's awful. 58 people shot, plus another 46 people shot. We're at 100 and, where are we? At 102-ish? 104. And then we got, where's the other one? 27. So 131 wounded, and then go 6 plus, where'd the other one go? I'm trying to find my numbers. I'm just looking for them. 6 plus 5 plus, where's my third weekend? I'm trying to find my third weekend. 7. What do you got?
6 plus 5 plus 7?
Yep.
18.
18 killed in 3 weekends. That's unconscionable. That's war zone stuff. That's in one city.
Yeah. Which, by the way, I actually was just about to mention this, but Jay from Legtown just texted in about it. Have you seen the videos of the Chicago guys daring Trump to send the National Guard and said that you don't know what you go. We'll fight back. Trump doesn't know what he's dealing with, and it's like
I've seen big dude saying that. He needs to wipe the Twinkie off his fingers and get a hard life.
Exactly.
I mean, the guy doesn't know anything.
And so somebody did a stitch to that and goes, "You're talking about the U.S. military, okay? I don't think you know what you're messing with." But that is the state of being in Chicago, where these gangs are so empowered they feel like they can literally take on the U.S. military. And part of me is just like, send them in and let them find out.
Oh, how about this one? Fox News story yesterday. This is huge, and it's not getting much press right now. The DEA, the Drug Enforcement Administration, did a huge swoop across New England, like all across New England. Sinaloa cartel was the target. They made 600 arrests in one night. 600 arrests. They took in 171 different suspects, made a total of 600 arrests. They announced that they've arrested a total of 617 people total, actually, with ties to the cartel across 23 field divisions, and seized in one night 480 kilograms of fentanyl, 2,200 kilograms of meth, 7,400 kilograms of cocaine, 16.5 kilograms of heroin, 714,000 counterfeit pills, 420 firearms, and $11 million in cash. You know what that also tells me? Is it wasn't hard to figure out where they were.
Yep.
I don't want to say that like I'm minimizing it, but what I'm saying is Trump's only been in office for, what, 9 months? Eight, that much? 8 months? He's been in office 8 months. This investigation could have been going on the last 4 years, and they didn't do anything with it. But right now, what you're looking at is arrest totals were 64 in Connecticut, 49 in Massachusetts, 39 in New Hampshire, 11 in Maine, 10 in Rhode Island, 3 in Vermont. That is a highly coordinated effort by the DEA to go after the Sinaloa cartel and just wore them out in one night across New England. Now, what that's telling you, though, is Trump is absolutely 100% going after crime. He is sick to death of watching foreign policy be the only place where you think about conflict and doing stuff and trying to make people safe. He's sick to death of the idea that our streets are just being ravaged by whether it be local criminals or cartels or, soft on crime policies. He's targeting all of it. So, yeah. And then there's this. He's now in Chicago. We talked about Chicago a minute ago, but they're calling it Operation Midway Blitz. Have you seen that? DHS.
Oh, it's specifically targeting illegal immigrants.
Illegal immigrants, yep. President Trump's Department of Homeland Security has officially launched Operation Midway Blitz. So all the stuff about stay out of our city, we don't want you here, you can't come, they just went ahead and said pound sand, and they came anyway. The Monday operation began, according to DHS, dedicated to the memory of Katie Abraham, who was killed in a hit-and-run crash by an illegal alien named Julio Cuco Bowl. Never trust a hyphenated name.
Never
trust a hyphenated name. ICE agents who have been quietly preparing in the city for over a week are now arresting illegal immigrants with criminal records. And it goes on to say that Operation Midway Blitz is what they're calling it. Trump said, we'd love to go to Chicago. We're waiting for a call from Chicago. They never got it, so they went anyway. Now, we're going to take a break here momentarily. When I get back from this break, though, I got to tell you, so Caroline Leavitt addressed this very thing today in a press conference at the White House. In the course of doing it, she didn't just talk about Chicago. She didn't just talk about Sinaloa cartel in New England. She didn't just talk about things like what happened in Charlotte. Y'all, she actually named Birmingham, Alabama, and Jackson, Mississippi. So we'll take a break right now. JP, we'll take that break. We'll come right back with time to play it. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Quit football and go live with my mom in Colorado again. And so I packed up all my stuff in my car and I drove to Colorado. And that was the biggest mistake of my life.
So mine wound up being the most impetuous good decision I ever made because I got caught sneaking out of the house. So I was drinking and smoking starting in 4th grade.
Yeah.
And mine wasn't self-medicating, I don't think. And it wasn't a lot. Yeah. But it was there. And I was hanging out with a bunch of pot smokers. And mine was more along the lines of, you said I can't, so I'm gonna.
Yeah.
You said I can't, so this is what I'm gonna do.
Sure.
And it was just like that live on the edge kind of sense, 4th grade though.
Yeah.
I mean, who does that at 11 years old? But nonetheless, mom caught me sneaking out of the house in 7th grade again and gave me the ultimatum. What do you want to do here? You want to go live with your dad? And I just went, yeah. I mean, that was it. There was no thought. There was no preconceived, I've been looking for this opportunity. There was no, I think this is a good idea. It was just get back at mom. Yeah. And so I said, yeah. Just the opposite, though. Mine wound up being the best decision I could have made. Totally impetuous. Yeah. But I did it. So you wind up in Colorado, though, brother. Yeah. Colorado weren't good for you.
No, that's 2002. Go back to Colorado. I was already about 3 weeks into my senior year in Kansas in my football season. So I uprooted and moved to Colorado and then went to school sort of like I didn't hardly ever go to school. By the time I moved in with my mom, it was free reign. I could do whatever I want. But my brother was driving for a drug dealer. And so I would ride around with them and watch him. He'd have, stacks of cash. All the guys wanted to be him. All the girls wanted to be with him. Pounds of drugs, like what's not to love, like this is, kind of the thing I'm infatuated with. And here's this guy doing this. And so I kind of went to work for him selling a little bit of weed. And then I started getting into cocaine. Cocaine's expensive. In order to do cocaine, you have to sell cocaine. And I always say, when I tell my story, the same thing that makes me good at what I do for a living now, which is sales, networking, and persuasion, it's the same skill set I was using then, the exact same thing. And so I went in a very short amount of time from selling, little bits of marijuana to next thing you know, I'm selling cocaine, and next thing you know, I'm selling lots of cocaine. And in a period of 5 years, I racked up 6 felonies, and all of it was drug or stealing things to buy drugs or getting in a high-speed chase with the cops or whatever. But I, went from selling little bits of marijuana to the point where I was pushing large amounts of cocaine and methamphetamines for cartels in Colorado Springs.
It's before it was all legal out in Colorado.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Now they let you take over apartment complexes.
Yeah, exactly.
Just,
now you can just bring your gang and have at it.
Yeah.
Well, all right. So, in going through getting ready to sit down with you today, and I've heard your story before, but I've never heard all of your story before.
Sure.
But you didn't just go to prison. You were on the run for a while, and
Sure.
then they caught you swinging on a rope out the window trying to get away from a drug bust.
Yeah.
And I am of the understanding that at some point, Dog the Bounty Hunter was offered the opportunity to track you down, and he declined.
Yes, and I don't think he declined. I don't think he, based off of, so I'll just tell the story. That's
You
what
have
we
to
do.
now
That's
that
what we
I've
do.
asked
We have to
about
tell
it.
stories. Yeah. So here I am. I've now racked up 6 felonies. That 6th felony was the doozy. Okay. And the 6th felony was, I was already out on bond. I was already on probation, and I'd been up for 3 or 4 days. Found out one of these guys who had informed the cops about some legal activity that I was involved with, found out that he had just come into some money, and he owed me money, and he also narked on me, right? And so in that world, you don't do that. Those are the rules, okay? You don't do that. If you want to play in this society, you don't do that. Now, a lot of people did, but there was an enforcement mechanism called me, okay? And if you're going to do that to me, I'm going to find you, and I'm going to hurt you. That was the way it worked. And he wasn't the only one that I did that to, but he was the one that ended up telling the cops again. So I went to his house. I'd been up for 3 days, strung out on meth, pound on his door. He answers the door. I said, he's like, "Hey, man, what's going on?" I just immediately said, "Why'd you tell on me?" "And I didn't tell on you. I didn't tell on you." I walked into his house, pushed him. "Why'd you tell on me?" "I didn't tell on you." And I just started to beat him relentlessly. And the guy that I was with, so the way that it reads in the charges, and it's because they only wanted me to go down. They didn't care about the other guy that was with me. I was their target, okay, for the cops, law enforcement. I was the one running all these drug rings and theft rings and motorcycle theft rings and all this stuff. So they were after me, and I wasn't going to tell on the guy that was with me. But this is what actually happened versus what if you read the articles online and the charges and stuff. I was tasing him and beating him and tasing him with a taser and beating him.
And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid, conservative, and just plain right. Saving the world one soundbite at a time. All right, so I've got a sound clip here. JP, I'm going to be calling up audio visual number 1. If you're watching the live stream, you can actually see it. Am I correct on that video? Yeah, you can actually see it and hear it. But Caroline Leavitt, press secretary for the White House, today addressed the questions related to the Trump administration, pressing down on the issue of crime-ridden blue cities. I won't go. It was too long to have the actual question up front. Am I summarizing correctly when I say that she was basically asked about the allegations that blue cities are where crime is often found, and she addressed it, and then also talking about the murder in Charlotte and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah,
Yeah.
essentially.
All right. And this is her response. Take it away.
First of all, I want to get to the premise of your question, Reagan, which is being pushed by Democrats, that there is crime in red states. Of course, there is crime in all states, but the crime in these cities is all in cities that are run by Democrats. If you look at the list of the top 20 high crime cities in the United States, every single one, with the exception of one in Louisiana, is run by a Democrat. And these Democrats have supported the same policies that I spoke about at the beginning of this briefing, like cashless bail. If you look at a red state, Mississippi, but a Democrat-run city in that state, Jackson, in 2019, Jackson, Mississippi, eliminated cash bail for virtually all misdemeanor cases. And while Jackson is not formally a sanctuary city, the state of Mississippi formally banned sanctuary cities, and this city has acted as a de facto sanctuary city for criminals and illegal aliens since 2017. Same thing, Birmingham, Alabama, a Democrat-run city in a red state. In 2017, the Birmingham City Council unanimously passed a resolution, quote, committing to establish sanctuary policies. So if you actually look at the facts from these Democrat-run cities, these are cities that are run by Democrats and by by members of the Democrat Party. These are blue cities, and they have all supported these disastrous policies which allow repeated career criminals back onto the streets to further commit acts of violence. And so to answer your question, yes, the president wants to work with anyone across this country who wants to end these horrible policies and to bring law and order to our streets. And I think that is proven by his tremendous cooperation with the mayor of Washington, D.C. and our nation's capital. And just look at the results of that. And I do have some updates for you on the D.C. crime.
Go ahead and stop me there. Yeah, there you go. First of all, I don't miss Karine Jean-Pierre one bit.
Yeah, talk about an upgrade.
Yeah, good Lord.
Yeah.
I mean, by the way, if you weren't watching it, let me just say this, in case you've not actually watched Caroline Leavitt in action, everything she said was without looking at notes.
Yep.
She was just literally, she was going from memory and staring at the person who had asked the question the entire, I mean, she was missing eye contact. You know, Karine Jean-Pierre, they used to nickname her the Notebook because she stared at her notebook and she read things to people.
Professional gaslighter.
Yes, exactly. But what you just heard, though, is absolutely where we are. Democrats, I said earlier, have walked into what I call a Trump trap. They have no choice but to look bad at this point. A, they can resist the idea of Trump providing assistance on crime and calling them out on their crime policies, which makes them automatically look like they're favoring crime and criminals. B, they could accept the help because their crime-ridden cities need it, but that's an automatic admission on their part, and they hate this idea that they weren't getting it done without his help. C, they could just, wait and Trump shows up, and oh gosh, he shows up, and we resisted the entire time, and then all of a sudden he does make the crime stats go down, and then we look like we're feckless because it took him to do it. And oh, by the way, we didn't ask for help. We just stood idly by and belligerently it happened whether we don't have control. So basically, if Trump shows up and does the work, I say Trump, you know what I mean? If the federal government shows up and begins to assist and do big, ICE raids and bring the National Guard to help quell riots and do all the things that it takes to, put law and order back in place in some of these blue cities, guess what? The blue can't help but look bad. And it's all because of themselves. They have walked into it like with their mouths hanging wide open, just staggered right in like zombies, just wandered into it. And there they are. And they can't do a thing about it because it's a self-inflicted wound. But y'all, and I say this with all sincerity, like for instance, Birmingham, that's near and dear to my heart. I did a lot of my growing up in Birmingham and Jefferson County. I understand that they are the ones who keep voting in the leaders who are doing this. I do get that. I also want my Birmingham back because the streets of Inslee and Wylam in West Birmingham are no longer safe. And that's where I used to run barefoot as a kid at my granny's house, going to see my cousins, running around and just, feeling free and having not a care in the world. And that's in my lifetime. Chicago, what a cool city. Parts of Chicago, you can't go out at night.
One of the best American cities, truly. It's
absolutely
awesome.
The history, the legacy. You want to go down to Wrigley Field. You want to do stuff. You want to go and see the shows. You want to walk down by the river. You know, New York City. I love New York City. And yet, and that was a bucket list. I took Charlene there. I had things that I carried in my wallet for 10 years with the hope that I would take her there one day. And I did finally. And then I look at it and think, what a loss right now.
And I mentioned earlier the videos of the gang members pretty much daring Trump to send in the National Guard. My gut reaction is send them in and let them find out. But then on the top, I just think about, I don't want those cities to turn into a war zone between the National Guard and gangs. But then it's like, what is the solution? Like, what is the solution? Besides, I feel like something drastic like that just has to happen. It hurts me to say that, but it's like, what else can we do to tackle these out of control gangs in Chicago and Birmingham other than something drastically like that?
One of the things that has to happen is the media has to get honest.
Yeah.
And so this whole narrative about what happened with this young lady on the train in Charlotte, the idea that it was not getting reported until Elon Musk made sure it got kind of viral on X, is shameful. And then the idea that they're now downplaying it and pretending that this, you're trying to, all MAGA Republicans are trying to make it a race issue. Well, first of all, it is.
Mm-hmm.
And secondly, it's also a crime issue. And secondly, it's a crazy policies issue. And fourthly, it's a she's dead issue.
Yeah. I mean, if that was their daughter, I guarantee they wouldn't be talking about like that.
They wouldn't. And so what's going to have to happen is the media is going to have to stop being so disingenuous, and you're going to have to see things like what happened in Charlotte needs to be allowed to be a part of the discourse. And that also needs to combine with the idea that, wait, did the crime stats in DC just go down? And
drastically?
They did.
Yeah.
And then, oh, by the way, illegal aliens, that's actually wrong. And cartels got arrested. Why don't we applaud? And if the media will pick up that narrative and run with it, and more people will look at it and go, I want that in my city. I tell you what, I've seen some very interesting interviews. Don Lemon goes out on the street.
I love that. Yeah.
And Don Lemon's getting worn out.
Mm-hmm.
He's going on the street going, would you want Trump to send the National Guard? Yeah. Oh, you would? That happens more than once now.
Yeah. And him like mocking the National Guard. He walked past some folks in the National Guard in uniform and kind of like mocking them like,
did he really?
You guys really think you need to be here? And they just, ignored him, rightfully so. But he was like, do you guys think it's a bit of a drastic measure? Like, he's a chucklehead. Don
Lemon's never done anything hard in his life. Not once. Anyway, bottom line is we're going to move on to another topic here in a minute. But yeah, this is a huge deal. And I really do believe it's a narrative that has to be advanced. And this young lady does not need to be, I don't want to say she's a martyr. I hate it. But the reality is we do need to make sure she's not forgotten. And I do believe that if there is some good that can come out of this, it's just hard to say, some good that can come out of it is that her life is not lost in the shuffle and she becomes a catalyst for making things better. Crime Busters. That's number one, Triple Dipper. We'll move to number two in a minute. Appeal to Heaven. Text lines are open, 833-687-4448. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back.
I'm trying to get him to admit that he told on me. Well, the guy that was with me had a blackjack, which is like it's not makeshift. Like you can buy them. Yeah. It's got like a mechanical spring inside of it with a heavy piece of lead with leather wrapped around it. Yeah. And he hit him square in the forehead with it. Boom, his head explodes. Blood goes everywhere. Sure. Was not the intention of that visit, okay? My intention, I actually was friends with the guy and liked the guy, but he had broken the rules. And so I was in there to make sure that he understood that you don't do this. The guy I was with cracked his head open. Blood went everywhere. And I'm like, well, at this point, we're done, okay? Like, this is over. And after he got hit in the head with that, he admitted that he told on me. That happened, but that, again, that was not the... It was not the intention of this meeting was to go that serious and that far, but it did. And once it did, I just started grabbing computers and anything that was of value. I told his brother, I said, look, if you guys don't pay us, pay me the money that you owe me, I'm going to be back and that's going to be you. And I walked out. And so they hit me with attempted murder, aggravated robbery, and extortion. That night I got arrested again.
That's go away charges right there.
Those are go away charges, yeah, for a long time. And it was my 6th felony. Right. So my 6th time I've been arrested and charged in separate cases. And so I got arrested that night. I went to court basically, and they dropped the attempted murder down to 1st degree because it didn't fit. And so my arraignment, I don't know what they call it. you're a lawyer. I'm not. Although after being in prison for a little while, you actually kind of turn into one. But they dropped it to first-degree assault, and so I was charged with first-degree assault, aggravated robbery, and extortion, and a slew of other things. But those were the heaters. And so I'm in there for 2 weeks, and I get bonded out again. And so now I'm out on several $100,000. No, I think it was like $135,000 worth of bonds, if I remember correctly.
Who posted bond?
There's so many rabbit trails I could go all the way down. I just don't know how interesting they are. There's this girl, I think her name was Lisa, that she was just infatuated with me and thought the world of me. And she went and used a credit card to buy a bunch of Xbox 360s that were out at the time, and then sold them and got the money to bond me out.
No kidding.
No one's ever got that story, Phil. You're the first that got that story. That asked that question. There you go. But yeah, I ended up bonding out and knew immediately that if I go to court, I'm going to prison for the rest of my life. So I'm not going to court, which now makes me a fugitive because I missed my court date. Right? I'm on the run. And the plan was, I had a friend, Spider. He and I were supposed to, and Spider's a very bad dude, like very, very bad, Hispanic guy who's part of the Sereno gang. And we were supposed to go down to California with his people and then go into Mexico. That's what they do on the movies. We felt like it was a good idea. Only problem is we never got around to doing it. And so I ended up on a number of occasions, the cops ended up finding where I was, but they didn't have a warrant and they weren't sure. And so there's a couple different ways that I was able to get away when I was on the run.
Yeah.
And that infuriated them. Okay.
This is how long? Like several weeks?
Yeah, it was about 2 or 3 weeks. Yep. And so you had, at the time, there was Officer Mork and Officer Goldbranson, which were with Colorado Springs Police Department. But then you had Sergeant O'Driscoll, who was the head of the Fugitive Task Force and Crime Prevention Unit.
You still remember their names?
Yes, I do. And there's a story in that
this?
too. This would have been 2007.
Oh.
Yeah, and so Sergeant O'Driscoll and his team, not only was he on the Fugitive Task Force, he was part of the Crime Prevention Unit. So even before I was a fugitive, both Mork and Goldbranson and Sergeant O'Driscoll and his team, they were dedicated to bringing me in and taking me down. Okay. Because of, the threat that I posed in running these crime rings or whatever. And, but the Crime Prevention Unit and Fugitive Task Force, it was ran by Sergeant O'Driscoll. They ended up, they have like unlimited budget, work with the feds, all this other stuff. And so they were on me. And so I got away a couple times, and finally June 19th, 2007, I am in what we deemed my safe house, and Spider had given me a nylon rappelling rope to tie to the bottom of this 70s retro recliner. And he's like, if you got to get out, you go, because the front door is, there's a hallway in these apartments, and then you go from the hallway into the apartment, and the only way out would be down the window, out the window and down on the ground, and it's third story. And I'm like, I'm never going to use that. That's crazy, but I did. Every 18 inches, I tied a double knot, so I could climb like that. And, I woke up June 19th, 2007, not thinking anything, just another day of being on the run.
Hey, all you Rightside ruffians out there, you are listening to Rightside Radio, solid conservative, just plain right. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid conservative, just plain right. Covering down on some major ground across the southeast U.S. of A. Y'all, I'm talking about this show. This one, goes like from Huntsville back over to Chattanooga. I'm talking about Tuscaloosa back over to Gadsden, and I'm talking about all the way down to that loveliest little village on the plains we call Auburn, straight across the line from there to call once again Fort Benning. Big old patches of North Georgia and Mississippi all thrown in too, just for good measure. And then, oh, by the way, that's just the radio. Then there's all y'all out there in the whole wide world, going to the World Wide Web, dialing us in on the live stream every single day. Places like X, YouTube, Rumble, Facebook, our website, rightsidemedia.org. And then, all you podcasters who catch it after the fact. Listen, the bottom line is I say it, and I mean it every time. The reason why I do that whole little spiel there about where all the people are watching the show or just listening to it is because we can see it and we appreciate it. You guys are the reason why we do what we do. Thank you very, very much. Let me get a few texts and then I'll go to the phones. JT Lacey Springs says the Chicago Corn Pops, when and if the National Guard arrives, will be the classic examples of shotgun mouth as they scurry to their mom's basement. I couldn't figure out what he was talking about. And then it dawned on me what he was saying.
A lot of them
Corn
will,
pop.
yeah. But then there's some that are stupid enough to actually try.
You know what? I would hope they wouldn't. But I can't imagine that they would find that as like, that'll advance our cause.
Yeah.
I mean, which one of them's going to say, watch this. I'll show those boys in uniform what I got. How well do they think that's going to work? Because what it'll do is you talk about bringing the wrath down upon that part of the city. It'll happen.
I mean, their cause is just be as big and bad as possible. So they probably would.
Jeff Rowe from Indiana says, hey, Phil, you know what the day of Chicago is the scariest? Election day, when all the dead Democrats rise up to vote. It's like the zombie apocalypse, he says. Tom with all the kids in Huntsville says, don't get me wrong, I love Chicago, but I won't go back. Okay. David in Taft, Tennessee sent me something on a YouTube channel, so I can't look at it right now. You can tell me what it is.
He was just saying that there was a woman in South Carolina who was also murdered in her sleep by multiple released offenders.
Oh, really? Recently? That's another one?
Yeah.
Jeez, that's awful. Let me go to the phones. Robert from Athens. Hey, Robert, how you doing?
How you doing, Phil?
I'm good, sir. I'm good. What's on your mind?
You explained the whole situation right at the start of the show. I mean, shoot, not your monologue, but well, yeah, I guess debate coming up. But there's no debate. Lawyer Phil, there's no debate. You break your oath to the Constitution of your state or the federal government, you're out. I mean, you're out in disgrace too. And the next man in line steps up to change what's going on. And if they can't do it, the federal government can. That's the way that's supposed to work. Now, Rangerfield, what would you do? What would happen to you if you broke your oath in the military?
Oh yeah, you'd be out on your ear, or maybe in Leavenworth.
Okay, yeah, Leavenworth should be, I guess. But the same applies to them. The same applies to judges. The same applies to any government high official, from the governor down, all the way to the cops on the street. And I tell you what, I ain't bending my back to communists. It's the same way in New York. How's that communist gonna swear to uphold the Constitution of America? They won't.
No, he won't. He won't. He'll take the oath and it won't mean a thing to him.
That's what is making me so damn angry. And yes, I carry my weapon with me all the time. I either have it in the truck or on me. I usually put it in the windshield so it don't slide out on my feet. Getting old and wears into the bones.
Just don't take a sharp corner with the windows down. You might be looking for your Glock. But
no, I don't have one of those. It's a little heavier than that.
Well, I appreciate you, Robert. Thanks for the call, man, and stay in the fight. All right.
God bless America.
Thank you. There you go. I did see, by the way, Caleb from Moulton, who refers to himself as hi. It's Karen Caleb with a K. He says judges and other officials in these blue cities should somehow be able to be held liable for these horrific preventable murders. Yeah, and so I talked about that earlier. It probably won't be judges unless judges had discretion, which they then use to be soft. If the judges are operating without discretion, see, if the judges don't have minimum sentencing guidelines to work with because the legislature didn't pass it, then it won't be the judges per se. But if the judges could have sentenced heavier and they chose not to, or if the judges didn't have to do cashless bail and they chose to, then yeah, the judges, they should be out on their ear. Like Alabama, where we actually elect judges, they shouldn't be on the bench much longer. But the other piece of this is local officials at both the city and state level, the ones who actually pass laws and ordinances, they need to be held accountable if they're being soft on it. And then DAs, DAs are allowed to have some measure of discretion too. Just because a crime was committed does not mean the DA has to bring the prosecution or does not have to bring it to the level that somebody else might want them to. A DA can do triage. A prosecutor can do triage on their caseload, and they can say, we're going to focus on this one, but not on that one. Or they can say, we're going to take a plea deal on this one, but we won't take the plea deal on this one. If you've got a prosecutor like some of these Soros-funded prosecutors who literally say out loud, I won't ever prosecute those kinds of crimes. Well, that's somebody who's got an agenda. They don't care about the rule of law, and they need to go. Absolutely need to go. Couple more quick ones. Jay from Lake Town. He says, have y'all seen the video of the gangsters in Chicago? Yeah, that's what you're talking about. He said, because they have Glock switches, they think they can win against the U.S. military.
Yep.
Listen.
We got switches around here. Y'all know how to mess with switches.
We got switches. It's, whatever. They don't have the discipline. They don't have the training. They don't have the chutzpah to actually get anything done like that.
But like I said, that just shows they've been so enabled and entitled. They think they can do whatever they want because nobody around them is checking them. No, you can't just threaten the National Guard. Like, are you crazy? Yeah. But that's what they think. So
yeah, it's nuts. By the way, text came in from John from Huntsville earlier. He says, I just want to say well done to JP for taking over first place in the football pick'em group.
Yeah, I beat John last week, I believe. So there you go. Yeah.
We didn't get to talk football yesterday. How'd you feel about the weekend?
It was primarily cupcake games across the board. There were interesting games. Florida lost to USF and the Swamp.
They did.
That was a bit crazy. But yeah, primarily it was a lot of not very exciting games.
And then you had spitting again.
You did in that game. They actually on the last drive helped Florida get down the field to kick a game-winning field goal. So it's USF is not a team to mess with. USF is actually ranked 18 now this week. So
Auburn came in. I saw it ranked 24 today.
24. Yep.
Yeah. So they're no longer an unranked team if you look at 25.
Yeah.
As opposed to top 20.
Yeah.
Bama's at what, 18? You said
19.
19.
So now Bama is behind USF. It's a sad day, but yeah.
But I did see. So Bama put up more points against. What was the stat? Was it, well, it's a non-conference team, obviously.
Saban never touched 70 in his career at Alabama. So it looks like Kalen DeBoer came in with a little bit of a chip on his shoulder.
Yeah. He was going to run the score up and show people what they thought on social media.
Yeah.
But I did think too, that it was one of those things where you can brag about that one, but I'm not sure you should brag about that one.
I mean, it at the very least, I just wanted to see some sort of fire and motivation from the players, which I think we saw. So who knows? Alabama's got Wisconsin this weekend, so it's a bit of a step up.
And Auburn's got, I can't remember. Who's Auburn got?
I actually can't remember either.
I can't either. I gave you that calendar, that schedule.
There did. If I want to go to my office, I can refer to it. It looks like Auburn has got, I can't tell from this. Oh, South Alabama looks like.
Oh, my alma mater.
Yep.
South Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Little known fact, I played football at South Alabama.
Did you actually on the quad?
No, we had a club team. I mean, pads and all, but it was really really bad football. It was like, I'm pretty sure there were lots of high school teams that could have beaten us, but we played Mobile College and Marion Military Institute and other stuff like that. And I still have a few aches and pains to prove it.
Yeah, but
all right. Hey, listen, we're going to take a break momentarily, but let me tell you, when we come back from this one, I'm going to switch gears entirely. All right. Appeal to heaven. You remember the story about the flag? I talked about it last week in one of my monologues. The Appeal to Heaven flag is a part of our history. It's a white flag with a green with an evergreen tree in the middle of it, green evergreen tree in the middle of it, and the words "An Appeal to Heaven" underneath. It was the very first ever naval jack flag. It was the flag of the Continental Navy when George Washington commissioned it, and it flew from our naval ships. It flew from our coastal batteries. It flew at several places, to include something I believe very, very similar to it flew at the Battle of Bunker Hill. That flag, An Appeal to Heaven, sort of inspired this dipper, because yesterday, what else also inspired this dipper that I'm about to do is that yesterday, the President of the United States, President Trump, actually went to the Museum of the Bible, and he was there for a meeting with, if you didn't know he already had it, he has what's called a faith-based commission. He literally established it's a Religious Liberty Commission. He's tired of the idea, largely speaking, that Christians are being given second-rate treatment by the U.S. government. Grannies being arrested for praying in front of, abortion clinics, cake bakers who are not allowed to decide they don't want to support a gay wedding. A little group of nuns who are having to sue the government because they don't want to have to buy medical insurance that they have to pay an extra premium for abortion rights when they're nuns. And all these things, President Trump looked at it and he said, you know what, we're going to have a Religious Liberty Commission. And yesterday he went to the Museum of the Bible and he actually called on the people of the nation to pray. I thought it was significant. And I got some thoughts on this. We'll come back. It'll be Dipper number 2, An Appeal to Heaven. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back.
And I was in
I
my
saw
living
one
room.
of your interviews. You said you woke up at 3 p.m.
Yeah, it was that afternoon. And it was that afternoon. I was again smoking weed, doing drugs, and you know your circadian rhythm gets a little off in that situation. And so woke up that afternoon. And you know it's a weird thing that you remember. I was cooking bratwurst and watching the Chappelle Show. And I looked out the window, and the way that it's set up, there's an apartment building here. And every year I go to Colorado Springs and I take my family. And this year I took my 15-year-old son, and he's heard me tell this story a million times. And I'm like, here's the bill. He's like, this is just like the building you said. I said, yeah, no, it's because it's where it happened. Okay, like I'm telling you. And we go and we look, you know, and there's an apartment building right here. This is the apartment building I'm in. And I saw the front end of a cop car sticking out. And I knew, okay, they're here. They're here. And so I kind of frantically, I'm like, okay, what am I going to do? Well, then all of a sudden I hear boom, boom, boom. Colorado Springs police, open up. They kick in the door. And I look, it wasn't my door. So I said, they don't know which apartment I'm in. They're kicking in every single door in the apartment on the 3rd floor. All they knew is I was on the 3rd floor. And so you've been in Afghanistan and Iraq. They're clearing rooms as though this was Afghanistan trying to find me, okay, in an apartment complex.
Yeah.
Boom. Okay. I'm like, okay, well, I look at the rope and this is my only option. And so I kick the screen out, throw my backpack out with all my stuff. And the only piece of furniture in the whole place was the TV and the retro recliner. Okay. That was it. And so I wrap the rope around my hand and I jump, boom. And it sticks exactly how it's supposed to. It's, you know, wedged in the window and I'm hanging there. Well, what I didn't know in that back parking lot, there was a surveillance van.
Oh, yeah.
That blends in with the rest of you wouldn't have known it was a cop car or whatever. It was a surveillance van. And they called it in. You know, someone's trying to jump out the window. I think we got our guy. And then 50 or 60 cops, they weren't going to miss me again, come swarming from the outside. Like you couldn't see them because they were right here.
So the jig was up at that point.
The jig was up. Yeah, the gun's drawn, get on the ground as though I had another option. You know, gravity necessitated that down was the direction I was going to go. And so I unwrapped my hand, fell, and hit the ground. Thankfully, didn't break anything. They put their knee in my back, cuffed me, put me in the back of the cop car, and that was it. June 19th, 2007.
So I'm fascinated by two things in the story.
Sure.
One is you still remember the cops' names.
There's a story for why, but go ahead.
Well, and then I may get back to that story.
Yeah.
But the other is you take your kids and you show them exactly where this happened.
Yeah.
So we're going to get a lot into, you know, you're obviously a different person today.
Sure.
I know the guy who did those things, but I don't know the guy who did those things
Sure.
because you're a different person. But that being said, you're pretty transparent with, and you have 7 kids, by the way.
Yeah.
You're a prolific breeder,
Yes.
but nonetheless, you've got a beautiful family, 7 kids, but you're telling them what's happened in your life.
Mm-hmm.
What's can I ask you real quick? What's their response when they hear about Dad before they knew Dad?
This is a great platform to share the gospel with your kids, right? But the older ones, it's a warning. Proverbs talks about the fool. Dad was a fool, right? I was the epitome of the fool, and you know, in Proverbs and really throughout the scriptures, it talks about a fool. And I didn't seek wise counsel. I didn't receive instruction. I didn't receive discipline. I didn't any of those things. I rejected all of it, and this is where I ended up. And so I don't think it's set. So I've got a 15-year-old, I've got a 10-year-old, a 9-year-old, a 7-year-old, a 6-year-old, a 4-year-old, a 2-year-old. Okay. The 15-year-old, the 10-year-old, the 9-year-old are the ones that really wrap their minds around what I'm talking about when I talk about being in prison and, you know, cops chasing me and that kind of stuff. The rest of the ones are younger and they're just like, wow, Dad, you used to be bad, but now you're good. You know, like they don't have any, but it will eventually form like their understanding. And it's something that I want them to always know. And the thing I always point them to is like, 1, don't be the fool, receive instruction, receive wise counsel, obey God and obey your parents. But also life isn't perfect. And if you stray, you can never stray so far that God can't get you. Right. And if God saved me, he can save anybody. And that's not cliche. It's literally, let me tell you about something. But again, specifically my 15-year-old, I drive him all around Colorado Springs. There's not a corner I didn't commit a felony in that city. Okay. And I drive him and I'm like, I did this here. I did this here. I did this here. I did this here. Like, this is who I was. You need to know and understand that, right? And so,
Proverbs 19, raise up a child the way they should go.
Yep.
When they get old, they won't depart from it.
Yep.
All right, brother. So you, the jig was up. They got you. The officers whose names you still recall were a part of the task force that brought you in, and you're staring at 6 felonies prior before you even got to this point, and now you've got the. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid conservative, just plain right. Man, just pulling pins on truth grenades. That's what we're doing. Yes, indeed. There's so, I'm about to move on to this next dipper, but there's so many things happening right now. I got to tell you, I'm looking at a story that I just saw. This popped up on Fox. A violent rampage. An elderly jewelry store owner was hospitalized after one of those smash and grabs robberies in San Jose. So San Jose, California. Oh, the state that, what's his name? Gavin Newsom says is safer than Alabama.
Yeah.
Gavin Newsom says all these things about other states, and yet you've got these massive like flash mob smash and grab robberies where they just run in and start grabbing stuff. Well, an 88-year-old jewelry shop owner had a stroke, and I'm watching the video where this group of thugs came in, started tearing things up, grabbing jewelry out of the cases, knocked him to the ground. He had a stroke, and now he's in the hospital. That's just unreal. And then another thing I just saw a moment ago was that the feds have indeed, on that Charlotte stabbing of the young lady, the Ukrainian lady, the feds have now officially charged him. They're charging him with a federal crime. And I believe it's because the feds don't trust that this guy is going to see justice if they leave him to the state.
And why would they? He's been put out 14 times.
That's
already.
Exactly right.
So it's like, yeah. And he said in the press conference too, that the only reason they're able to federally charge him is because it was on a public transit.
Yeah.
So
yeah, they're charging him with a count of committing an act causing death on a mass transport system. Attorney General Pam Bondi said the DOJ will seek the maximum penalty for Brown, saying that the August 22nd attack was a direct result of failed soft-on-crime policies. She has directed her U.S. attorney in the area to federally prosecute DeCarlos Brown Jr., a repeat violent offender with a history of violent crime for murder, and said, "We will seek the maximum penalty for this unforgivable act of violence. He will never again see the light of day as a free man." Wow. I mean, that's just game on right there. That's the federal government saying, "State, you failed this young lady." By the way, you saw a story about the young lady a minute ago.
Yeah. So the federal district attorney for that area was doing a press conference earlier today and said that the U.S. government actually offered to send her body back to her family in Ukraine, and her family in Ukraine opted for her to be buried in the United States because she loved America so much. They thought it was more right for her to be buried here.
Wow.
And my initial gut reaction to that is we failed her because she fled the biggest war since World War II in Europe to come to the United States for safety. And she couldn't even hop on a public train without, being killed. And it's so sad. But, hopefully, like you said, that this can open the door to people realizing there's a serious problem, and even people on the left to realize this is a serious problem.
You know what else is a serious problem? You and I were talking about this off the air. If you watch the video, there were people in the train car.
Yeah. And
I don't know to the extent that they understood what had happened. I don't know. So I don't want to just judge them outright, but they did nothing.
Yeah.
And they knew something had happened, and they still did nothing. And the guy literally walked down through the center of all these people, mumbling about how he got that white girl. I got me a white girl. I got me a white girl, while he's dripping blood. All you see the blood dripping on the floor.
Yeah.
And it's a macabre scene. He's obviously out of his head. But this guy should not have been on the streets. But those people on that train, I don't want to blame them, but I will say this. When Daniel Penny in New York stopped a guy from harassing and perhaps trying to kill or maim people on a train, he was vilified as a criminal. And Alex and what's his name? Bragg, the DA, Alvin Bragg, put him on trial.
Yep.
And he had his life was made a hell for over a year.
Mm-hmm.
And the reality is, it's when the Alvin Braggs of the world ignore real crime and prosecute the Good Samaritans, it creates a situation where nobody wants to get involved because they don't want to be Daniel Penny.
Yep, exactly. The precedent was set. And I will say this situation was a bit different because the guy literally was just sitting there and then just decided to stand up and stab her. Like he wasn't walking around saying, I'm going to stab you. So like, at least there's that. But
there was no preceding moment there.
Yeah, I think it was a minute and 18 seconds from the moment that she got stabbed to until she ended up passing away. On video of her sitting there with blood coming out of her neck, crying alone. And there was a woman next to her who literally stood up, looked at her crying, and just seemed kind of unbothered, like, well, whatever. And it's sad that she, nobody even tried to, and I'm not saying anybody could have done anything in that minute and 18 seconds, but the fact that nobody did anything to comfort her or try to do something and just let the guy walk away with
we can't
blood
be that society. We
No.
cannot be that society.
Yeah, but like I said, thankfully Daniel Penny was eventually proven innocent, but in the meantime, his life was made hell, like you said.
Yeah.
And I'm sure Daniel Penny is a bit cautious to be walking around certain areas, by himself because of all the death threats he got. Like people may be thinking, is it worth it to actually do something?
Wow.
So
wow. Well, I tell you what, I'm not going to kick off this dipper till we get back now because I got a minute and a half. We go to the break. But yeah, let me get a few text lines real quick. Text lines 833-687-4448. That's 833-68 right. Thomas Mathens says, Colonel Great Dipper, number one, thanks. He said also, I heard something of you. He said, I heard some what?
Audios of you on Fox.
Audios of me on Fox.
Okay. He saw your Fox appearance. Yeah.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Yeah, and I appreciate that too. Thanks, Thomas. I'll check out the text. Lewis from Trinity says, I saw the video. It was more than a smash and grab. They backed up an SUV through the storefront window, and it all came crashing down. It was real planned. He said, saw all the cars pulling up behind it and rushing into the store. One of the thugs knocked the man down. I hadn't seen that part of the video. Good Lord. So they literally drove a truck through the window or a vehicle through the window. That's just sick. You look at it and think it's just depraved. And I'm watching the video as he gets knocked down. Luann from Huntsville sent us something. What is that? Something about the judge who released DeCarlos Brown?
Yes.
Oh,
yeah.
It says, I did see this story. So if I'm not mistaken, this particular story is the one that talks about, at one point, this murderer, DeCarlos Brown in Charlotte, North Carolina, they have a way up there for people who are not even practitioners of the law to become judges. And I don't understand that at all.
That's great.
That's like, I just feel like being a judge today.
It's a recipe for success.
I got money for a campaign. Okay. But yeah, Judge Teresa Stokes. And Teresa Stokes was the magistrate judge who released him on minimal bail, if anything. And she apparently gets basically a benefit from releasing people because then they go to a facility where she gets paid for them going there. It's like pay to play. It's ridiculous. All right, coming back, hour number 3 already. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. We'll be right back. Of felonies, and you're looking at 384 years potentially.
Sure.
So you're looking at life in prison at that point.
Correct. Yeah.
But you negotiated.
Yeah.
Did you negotiate for yourself, or did your lawyer do a good job?
It's a mix, but there's a bunch between that. But yeah, it gets into mediation. But there was 9 months between then, and in those 9 months, so they take me to county jail. I'm facing 384 years in prison. At least that's how my public defender described it, because how it works, and the numbers are shaky in my head, but I have to do the math. But either way, each charge that I was charged with gets doubled because I was on probation and on bond, so they can double it, so they enhance it.
Yeah.
And then they times it. They can times it by 4 because it's the habitual criminal.
Yeah.
Right. And so I can break it all down with math or whatever, but the habitual criminal. So if you have 3 felonies, they call that. I'm not going to say what they call it. It's the B word, the little B word. And if it's 4 or more, they quadruple your sentence, and they call that the big B word. Okay, habitual. Anyway, so I was at 6, so I'm times 4, and then so they stack, and then they times it by 4, and then that's where that comes from.
This is state, not federal, right?
State, Colorado State. Yep, Colorado State prison.
It didn't wind up being 384 years, but you still got a pretty stiff sentence.
Got a pretty stiff sentence, and the transformation really began in county jail. So I was in county jail for 9 months, basically holding out and that's part of your negotiations in county jails. Like, well, I'll just sit here until you bring me a deal that I want, right? And they'll only do that for so long. But it is, some people just want to get in there and they plea and they go to prison, But I was gonna, bide my time or whatever. Well, I'm now in county jail thinking I'm gonna go do the rest of my life in prison. That's how I'm seeing this. And so I'm in there thinking I have to create this reputation of being a bad dude, so when I get to prison, people won't mess with me. And so I do, and I'm hanging out with all the wrong people in there. I catch one assault case. They put me in the hole, then send me to another unit. I'm there for a little bit. They bring in another guy that had told on one of my friends. And I had to go beat him up really, really bad. Caught another assault case. So I caught 2 assault cases in county jail. So on top of all my other stuff, I caught 2 more assault cases. They were misdemeanor assaults, but they're still assault cases. And they put me in administrative segregation after that. So they're like, okay, you don't play nice with others.
That's solitary, basically,
solitary, right? Correct. Exactly what it is. Yep. Solitary confinement. You're in a cell by yourself for 23 hours a day. You get an hour out to make a phone call and take a shower, maybe do some push-ups or whatever, and you go back to your cell. That's what you get. And I was in there for about 4 months, okay? And so it was 9 months total, 5 months out, 4 months in ADSEG or solitary. And in that stay in solitary, God began to open my eyes. I don't believe he saved me yet, but he opened my eyes to the fact it was my fault that I was in there. And this is huge. I was just reading a Rick Burgess's new book last night because I'm going to interview him later today. But it like that was one of the chapters when it talks about just rugged accountability. Like you have to take accountability for your actions if you're ever going to repent. And this was the beginning of me realizing, because up to that point, I blame my mom for my circumstances. I blame my dad. I blame the judge. I blame the cops. Da 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 da.
No more victim.
Exactly. And but what was wild though, I really believed I was a victim. Like I wasn't just saying that to get out of trouble. I really believed it, which is weird. But God, in his mercy, opened my eyes like, no, dummy, this is your fault. Sure, does your mom and your dad play a role? And yeah. But your choices got you here. They didn't beat that guy up. They didn't jump out the window. They didn't, sell drugs. They didn't do those things. You did those things. Yeah. And so when I realized that my bad choices created the bad circumstances, that was extremely liberating, because what it meant is that I was free to make good choices that would then create good circumstances. And it was like this epiphany that went off in my brain. And so as much as you can in a cell by yourself, I began to start taking ownership of my thoughts, feelings, behaviors, decisions, all that kind of stuff. So much so that my family really began to because I would have a phone call a week. That's all they would give me. Not that I could call them every day on my hour out if I wanted, but my family would pick up the phone once a week. They'd cut me off. I'd burned every bridge.
Wow.
And in those weekly phone calls, my family started to notice a huge change in my attitude.
Who'd you call?
My grandma Barb.
Okay.
Yep. And I would call my grandma Barb, and usually it would be on Sunday night, and my mom would be over there, and my brother would be over there, and and so they'd pass the phone around or whatever, and I'd talk. But they specifically, my grandma Barb is like, something's changed in him, and everyone, and a lot of people in the family told grandma she was crazy. You just got a soft spot for Brian, whatever. But she's like, no, I feel like something's changed. And
is that your dad's mom or your mom's mom?
That's my mom's mom.
Okay.
Yep. Meanwhile, my dad's mom, the one that was teaching Sunday school for Miss K, Scott Beeson, when he interviewed me, said, who was praying for you? It was a good question. I said, well, Betty Dawson was. And lots of credit goes to her for that. But Grandma Barb, she began to really believe in me and believe that there was a change that had happened, so much so that she, so in this time period, that 4 months I'm in there, I guess about 3 months into my ADSEG stay, my public defender came and said, okay, Brian, the district attorney, she was like really excited to give me this deal like it was a good one.
Your attorney was?
Yes, public pretender. And she comes and says, Brian, this is great. If you sign this deal, you're only going to get 32 years with a crime of violence. And I'm like, amazing. When you're 23, 384 and 32, there's not a lot of difference, right? And so I was not real excited about that. So I called my grandma and I said, I'm going to prison for the rest of my life. Because the way it works in Colorado, it's way different than it is in Alabama. On a 32-year sentence with a crime and violence sentence enhancer, which is another way that you have a crime of violence. So they stack your sentences, then they aggravate it, and then they multiply it. So it's basically they're just going to throw everything they can at you. If you go to trial, and she explains this to me, if you go to trial, this is what they can do to you. But I tell my grandma I'm going to prison for the rest of my life, and she reaches out to these attorneys. She's got a little bit of money. She doesn't got a lot of money. She just reached out to these attorneys. They're like 60 grand, 120 grand, 150 grand to represent. He's got 6 felonies.
I'm underbilling myself apparently as an attorney.
Yes. Well, if you get into criminal law and you got a guy with 6 felonies, you should probably charge him. But they're like, and she's like, well, I can't afford any of that. And I said, go talk to Jeff Barker. Jeff Barker's got a great reputation for being kind of an up and coming new lawyer who's just really, really good. And she goes and sits down with him, and he's like, look, best I can do is $10,000. And if he goes to trial, I need another 10. My grandma says, I don't have another 10.
Like the dude just said, solid, conservative, and just plain right. Well, welcome to hour number 3 on a Taco Tuesday. Taco Tuesday. I'm officially hungry now. Is that okay? I just am.
No, I am too.
Listen, I got to tell you right now, the lovely Charlene last night made homemade Texas taco soup.
Ooh.
This is like one of my favorite things she makes. Texas taco soup. Picture like really hearty vegetable beef soup, but it's also got like a little Mexican spice to it. And then she puts tortilla chips in the bottom of the bowl, pours the soup down on top of it. And I'm not going to lie, she also made a homemade from scratch coconut cream pie for dessert.
Oof, man.
I'm a fat man.
That's quite the meal. Mexican food, man, it's so good. It's one of my favorite cuisines.
Cuisines. That's a good word.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Makes you sound very bon vivant.
Yeah.
So, all right, we're going to jump into Dipper number 2. An appeal to heaven. I said earlier that an appeal to heaven, the flag, the appeal to heaven, it comes from a phrase in one of the great treatises by John Locke during the early days of the colonial, the rising up of the colonial sense that we should be a nation unto ourselves, and that we were being oppressed by the larger, monarchy of Great Britain. And John Locke said, in the absence of an ability to appeal to a worldly authority, and I'm paraphrasing slightly, what we are left with is an appeal to heaven. And that phrase was then grabbed and put on the flag, an appeal to heaven. So that's what I named this Dipper, an appeal to heaven. Well, that's exactly what happened yesterday. So President Trump yesterday went to the Museum of the Bible. By the way, if you have not seen it, the Museum of the Bible is very cool in Washington, D.C. I believe it's the family that founded Hobby Lobby, if I'm not mistaken, founded the Museum of the Bible. Check that out for me, JP. I think it is. But they founded the Museum of the Bible. And so first of all, there will be lots and lots of exhibits of, classic old Bibles, historical Bibles, pieces of artifacts of biblical history. But they've also got some very cool interactive exhibits. Was it Hobby Lobby family?
It was, yeah, the Green family.
Yeah. But they also founded this, have this great display. What am I trying to say? Use your words, Phil. I'm looking at Fox News. It's on my screen and it distracted me. But they have this great interactive, kind of like a ride thing where you get in it and you strap yourself in and you're standing up, but then all of a sudden it leans forward. You got this giant IMAX screen in front of you and it makes you feel like you're flying. And all of a sudden you're flying through Washington, D.C. and it'll fly you from one place to the other. And it's got this, you get this really sense that you're flying because they have breezes blowing in your hair. And,
I did one of those rides at Disney World when I was a kid, like the 4D, I didn't even know
flying through DC. You don't realize how much scripture is written on monuments.
Huh.
There's actually on the top of the Washington Monument, there's scripture engraved on the top of the Washington Monument. So it'll fly you to the top like you're a drone and you can sit there and you can look at it and then you'll fly to the Supreme Court building and then you'll fly across it. It's crazy.
But yet we are a Christian nation. But I didn't know we had that much.
Goodness.
I didn't know we had scripture on the top of the Washington
everywhere.
Monument.
It's all over DC because we are a nation that was founded one nation under God. And I recognize that we have freedom of expression, freedom of religion, freedom of speech, all of it. I realize that we are not going to tell someone that we're going to be a nation that establishes a certain religion, but you cannot say that we weren't a nation that was established by religion because there were people here in our founders who determined to write God into our founding documents. President Trump went to the Museum of the Bible yesterday, and he gave a great speech. I loved it personally. He launched what's also called the America Praise Initiative. What he's asking for is for people of the United States to pray as we come into the 250th anniversary of our nation next year. And he's setting up the America Prays Initiative. What this particular whitehouse.gov release I have in my calloused former paratrooper hand says is a call for Americans to unite in prayer for the nation's strength and peace and prosperity as the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence approaches. There's a part of his speech that I thought was pretty significant. And JP, you got the soundbite on that? I'm going to call up audio, video. Is it video or is it audio? It's video too, right? Yeah. AV number 2, play it, buddy.
America was founded on faith, as we know, and I've been saying it for a long time. And when faith gets weaker, our country seems to get weaker. When faith gets stronger, as it is right now, we're having a very good period of time. After some rough years, good things happen for our country. It's amazing the way it seems to work that way. And under the Trump administration, we're defending our rights and restoring our identity as a nation under God. We are one nation under God, and we always will be.
It's what a joy to hear the president of the United States say that. Now, I already know, because I can anticipate the left. The left is going to go, he's a flawed man. He shouldn't be saying this kind of, what a hypocrite. Let me tell you something. The same day he was saying that, I happened to be reading Philippians 1 in my quiet time that morning. And I don't know why, but I was struck by the fact that in his letter to the church at Philippi, Paul was writing, and he talked about the fact that there are a number of you out there preaching the gospel. He said, some are doing it for the wrong reason, some are doing it for the right. He said, but for whatever reason is being done, the gospel is being advanced. Now, I'm paraphrasing, but what I'm saying is this. The president of the United States just used his platform to call on people to pray and to ask for us to be considered one nation under God. If you don't like his life, if you think there's something about him that is in some way disingenuous or untrue, you can try that. But I will tell you this, God's word never comes back void. That's my opinion, but it's also scriptural. God's word never comes back void. The fact that he stood there and used the power of the presidency to say those things is still going to wind up being a blessing over this nation. What you got?
I was going to say Moses was a murderer. David was a lustful man. I mean, what was it that Paul also wrote? That there's no way, I'm the most wretched sinner. There's not anybody more wretched of a sinner than I am. So
absolutely,
that's kind of the basis of who God uses, is people that maybe have a bit of a messed up past, and he uses them to advance his gospel. So that's kind of the theme. So yeah,
kind of, sort of.
Yeah.
There was a great Christian humorist a few years back. I'll think of her name in a minute. Joyce something. Anyway, but bottom line was her book was called "God Uses Cracked Pots."
Yeah,
and because he does. And I also remember too. I think it was Norman Vincent Peale was asked one time, "Why do we need to ask for the Holy Spirit to fill us up on a regular basis?" He says, "Because we leak."
Yep, exactly. Yeah.
so the reality is we are flawed people, and I don't know. I'm not going to try and second guess whether Trump has had a true experience with the Lord and become a believer, but I believe he is, because he professes to be. But what I do know is the president of the United States stood up in the Museum of the Bible yesterday and said, when our faith gets weaker, our country seems to get weaker, and when faith gets stronger, good things happen for our country. And he said, we are defending our rights and restoring our identity as a nation under God. He said, we are one nation under God, and we always will be. Now, he went on to do several things that I thought was significant. He not only announced this as the beginning of what he's calling the America Prays Initiative, which is huge. The America Prays Initiative, as we pray into the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. But he also then made several announcements. For instance, he announced that there will be a right to pray in public schools by executive order he is issuing to the Department of Education for them to put out the guidelines by which people can expect to be allowed to pray in schools. I really believe that a part of the downfall of public education was when we took God out of schools. It doesn't mean you have to be, you have to hear the gospel every day as part of your lessons, but what it also doesn't mean is that you should not be, what I'm trying to say, you should not be denied the right to pray in your school. It's a key part of your life. It's a place that your tax dollars have paid for. And the idea that, you should be disavowed from or disabused of the right to pray in school is just absolutely antithetical to common sense and our founding documents. Trump has said, I am pleased to announce this morning the Department of Education will soon issue new guidance protecting the right to prayer in our public schools. He also went on to talk about the fact that America has always been a nation that believes in the power of prayer, and we will never apologize for our faith. Ever, ever, never, never. And then he said, we will never surrender our God-given rights. We will defend our liberties, our values, our sovereignty, and we will defend our freedom. Liberals' heads are exploding right now. Absolutely exploding. Then he brought a kid up on the stage with him, 12-year-old boy. A 12-year-old boy from out in California who, from the podium, can you imagine being 12 years old and the President of the United States calls you up to the podium?
No, I could not.
12 years old.
I don't think I could do that now.
I was still reading comic books and, and flipping bottle caps. But Trump had a 12-year-old boy from California join him on stage who shared how he had been forced to read a book that contradicted his beliefs to his kindergarten buddy. The young man told the crowd, Jesus means everything to me, and I believe kids like me ought to be able to live our faith at school without being forced to go against what we believe. So a memo has now been issued by the Office of Personnel Management protecting religious expression in the workplace to include schools. And I'm telling you, this is a whole new day, you guys. This is absolutely. When we get back from this break, I'll tell you some things that are happening out there, though, just to give you examples of why this is so crucial. What are we up against? Well, you already know, but I'm going to tell you anyway. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back.
It's like, well, he ain't going to trial, so I'm not that worried about it, right? So he's like, okay, $10,000. And so he ends up becoming my attorney, and we're a little bit long for him, so I'm going to go into some of this because this is really cool. I've never told this part of the story in any media hits. And so now I'm up against the wall when I try to retain this attorney. The next day, I've got to take my plea or I've got to go to trial. So they've got witnesses showing up for my trial that day. So if I don't take the plea, I go to trial.
You're down to knuckle dragging.
Down to knuckle dragging. And you're an attorney. You kind of know how some of this stuff works. Yeah. The judge says, you don't get a new attorney, buddy. No, he's not your attorney. Your attorney is this lady, and you either sign the plea or you go to trial. So I'm like, my grandma's like, my new supposed to be attorney's like, and the public defender comes over and she's like, hey, I don't know how this happened, but one of the witnesses in the case got stuck in traffic or whatever, and she's not going to be able to be here. She has to get back to work. And so they had to delay it, and they punted for 2 weeks. And in that 2 weeks, I'm able to have him retain, and he gets me into a mediation hearing. And in the mediation hearing, this is really cool too, negotiation tactics. They were never able to, so what a mediation is, they have a retired judge, his name was Judge Toth. I'd be in one room with my attorney is how it's supposed to work. And it's supposed to be at the courthouse, and I'm in one room, the district attorney's in another room, I'm with my attorney, and Judge Toth goes back and forth. Okay? I think I should get 8 years. Well, we think you should get 32. Well, I think I should get 10. I think it's basically like horse trading, okay? Well, we couldn't get our calendars to line up to get it done at the courthouse, so she had to come to the county jail on Martin Luther King Day on her day off. Okay, and she's in there in her pajamas, the deputy district attorney. She's in there in her pajamas. She's absolutely pissed that she's there. And I can see this. I'm like, she doesn't want to be here. I've got 384 years. I've got nowhere to go. And she obviously doesn't want to be here. So I just kept dragging and dragging and dragging.
We discovered years ago the best time to buy a car is right before the staff leaves for a holiday weekend.
Yeah, it's like, go, go, go.
So you're in that mode right now. All right. She's in her pajamas.
She's in her pajamas. It's snowing outside. And she just doesn't want to be there. And so I keep dragging and keep counteroffering, and she loses. And she says, that's it. 15 years with the crime of violence. That's my final offer. No way with the violence in your crime and the assault cases that you've caught in county jail, these 2 extra assault cases, will I ever drop this crime of violence? And so on a 32-year sentence with a crime of violence, you're going to do 24. Okay, so that matters. It's a huge, you're going to do more of your time.
Yeah.
And then on a nonviolent, you're going to do maybe a third of your time or less. Okay. So I'm heavy focused on that crime of violence. Like, okay, we got her down to a decent year range, And I don't know where this came from. It had to have been a God thing. And I looked at my lawyer. I said, you don't tell Judge Toth anything. I said, you walk in there to that district attorney, go tell her that, my client doesn't want to end up in he wants to change his life. He doesn't want to end up in a maximum security prison with swastikas all over his face. He wants to change his life. He's willing to give you a year if you drop the crime of violence. And the way their thing works is like, I get 16 instead of 15, cha-ching. And all of a sudden, all that, conviction about crime of violence just went out the window.
So she got a trophy, basically.
Correct. Yeah. And so I gave her the year, which is that's good for her. So she drops the crime of violence. And so I get 16 years with no crime of violence is what I ended up getting sentenced to. Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And
that is crazy. You are into sales.
Yeah. And I was the happiest person ever to be sentenced to 16 years. Like, yay, 16 years in prison. But again, everything's relative when you face it to 32 or 384. Yeah.
All right. You said in one interview I saw with you, I've forgotten, it's some folks that you had known, but they have their own podcast, Emily and somebody else. I've forgotten the guy's name, the husband and wife team.
Chris and Emily, yeah.
Yeah, Chris and Emily. But at one point you said in that solitary confinement where you began having that epiphany about accepting responsibility for your own actions and you're not a victim of that, you felt like God had thumped you. But you still weren't there yet.
Yeah.
But then you started meeting and hanging out with a guy who, in your words, what I saw was he began to drop seeds of the gospel in your life.
100%.
And was that in prison? Was that in county jail? Where was
prison.
That? That was prison.
Yeah. So here I am. God thumps me on the head and shows me it's my fault.
Right.
Shortly after that, I get into this negotiation hearing.
Right.
My heart's softened to the idea of God and him working in my life.
Because he has been.
Because he has been. And then I get 16 instead of 32, so now I'm looking at getting out in 5 years instead of 24 or never.
And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid conservative and just plain right. Just pulling pins on truth grenades. Bulletproof influence, my friends. Bulletproof influence. I got several things on my plate. I know you had some comments on social media there. What you got over there?
Oh, we just got a good comment here on YouTube from Dennis. Just says, when the prayers go up, the blessings come down.
Nice. Like it. I like it lots. That's a good bumper sticker.
That is.
I got a Texas A&M chancellor story here, Washington Times. This is part of the reason why I think we've got to see a return to values and faith. You got stuff like this. The Texas A&M chancellor is now having to deal with the fact that and by the way, the only reason why it came out was because Daily Wire got hold of the story. Daily Wire. So I have this piece from Washington Times yesterday, but it stemmed from a Daily Wire expose. Daily Wire found out that a student at Texas A&M was sitting in class when he realized his professor was about to start using course materials on transgenderism, including something called the gender unicorn. I mean, what the gender unicorn? What a stupid name anyway. The gender unicorn. That's just, that already sets me on edge.
Are you a unicornophobe?
I don't know that I'm a unicornophobe, but I think that I am just opposed. How about that?
That's fair.
But this particular student was shocked to find out that he was being told that the class instruction materials included statements like childhood is a time to figure out how to be a boy or a girl or a man or a woman or another gender. And that children and adolescents are expected to be sexless, even as our culture valorizes and idealizes, even eroticizes youth. And the student said, "I don't want to be here. This violates my faith." And the teacher actually threw him out of the class. Well, he complained. Daily Wire found out. The teacher has now been fired, I believe. Texas A&M is trying to crawfish on it. But their statements have really not addressed the fact that what we had here was a guy who literally was thrown out of his classroom because he expressed his faith being, opposed to what was being taught. And this is not the same as, if you go to let's say you go to you're taking a class on pharmaceuticals and you're opposed to marijuana, but they teach a class on medical marijuana. It might be a little different. All right. This is actually teaching something, claiming it's true when it's in violation of your actual faith-based precepts. And then you got other stories that are out there. I'm looking at one right now. Where did it go? Hang on a second. Yeah. The story off of Town Hall that came out just in the last couple of days about how the left constantly belittles prayer. And, it points out that what we saw in the aftermath of the shooter in Minneapolis, which has already fallen off the news channels, by the way. Where'd that story go? Remember that?
Yeah,
by the way,
I remember that.
The transgender shooter went to a church. Kids were praying, shot up the church.
It is crazy. Now that you mentioned it, it is crazy how quiet that's gone.
Yeah. But what became the object of the left's wrath was the idea that we should call on people to pray for the victims and the families and the community. Never mind the fact that the church itself was calling for prayer. Never mind that the people of the community were saying, we would appreciate your prayers. The left was getting all over Christian people who care around the nation, who were daring to say, we're praying. Never mind the fact that the transgender shooter had statements like, where's your God now, written on the side of his weapon. But the fact is, we're a nation where prayer means something. It really does. And I just love the fact that Trump did that. Now, Trump also established something back in May, and I'd forgotten about this. And granted, I understand that not every religion is Christianity. I believe that Jesus Christ is the way, the truth, and the life, and no man comes to the Father except by him. I believe he's my savior. I do with all my heart. I understand that not everybody believes the way I do. But what I also understand is, in recent years, Christians have been the ones who have been persecuted in the United States, and don't tell me they haven't. Don't try and pretend otherwise. Christians have been told that for some reason, the very idea that we are willing to share our faith in the public square makes us somehow Christian nationalists and that we're the problem. And if you remember, the Biden administration at one point was even talking about how Christian nationalism, extremism was part of the root of our society's ills. But in May of this year, President Trump, with only a couple of months in office, issued an executive order, and I've got a copy of it right here, whitehouse.gov, May 1st of this year. By the authority vested in me as president by the Constitution and the laws of the United States of America, it is hereby ordered that it shall be the policy of the executive branch to vigorously enforce the historic and robust protections for religious liberty enshrined in our federal law. And he went on to talk about the fact that he was establishing a Religious Liberty Commission, people who will provide advice to the president, that basically a 14-member commission, including individuals, it says, chosen to serve as educated representatives of various sectors of society, the private, the educational, the religious, the states, the diverse perspectives, but shall provide advice to the president on issues that are impacting the ability to freely enjoy your faith. Listen, I think it's awesome. I'm personally stoked. I believe that an appeal to heaven is the way to go. And I am glad to see that our president is willing to say so from the pulpit of the presidency. That's just huge.
Yeah, what a difference one administration makes to the other. We had the Biden administration having transgenders come into the White House lawn and shirtless to where now we have a president who is actively saying that we need prayer. Our nation, when we get weaker in our faith, is normally when times start to get bad.
Yeah.
Whether you believe or not, sincerely, that like Trump is being serious, I mean, the air cover he's providing to Christians to be able to express their faith.
What a great way to put it. The air cover. I love that. All right. That's break time. We're taking a break. We'll come right back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We will be right back.
God had moved. And so I'm like, okay. But I was always open to God. I always prayed to God. I always knew that God was real. I had some experiences in church growing up that were like bad experiences, but good experiences. I don't know how to really describe it. Like, these people had something that I wanted, but I also saw how judgmental and kind of hypocritical that they were. Yeah. And so I was just like, but I knew that God was real. And so I prayed. Like, when I was a kid, I prayed. Through my addiction, I prayed. When I was a fugitive, I prayed a bunch. And when I was in county jail, I prayed even more, wondering about what my sentence was. I knew God was real. But I didn't understand how Jesus factored into it, and no one ever really taught me about Jesus. So I was agnostic. I knew that God was there, but I didn't understand how it worked. Right.
Yeah.
And so I get to, the first prison I get to is called Huerfano County Correctional Center, which is in Walsenburg, Colorado. You go in there, you got in Colorado, you wear greens. And so you got your greens on, and you've got a couple extra pairs of greens and a couple pairs of state issued underwear, like a cup and a spoon, and you walk into your unit and the thing slams behind you, and you're now in your unit that's got 120 guys in there. You're like, okay, what's about to happen? Because the new guy comes in, fish, fresh fish, and here comes this big, huge dude with a Semper Fi tattoo on his arm.
Oh, former Marine, huh?
Yeah. Well, always a Marine, they say. True. I've made the mistake of calling him a former Marine and been corrected 17 times. So, but he walks up and reaches out and shakes my hand. He says, "My name's Charles. I'm a Christian, and this is a faith pod." And so all the movies that were going off in my head about the doors slamming and someone coming up to stab me having to fight to see if I was tough. Like, there's all the things that I thought coulda, woulda, shoulda. But this big, burly, huge dude who definitely could have beat me up is like, "My name's Charles. I'm a Christian. This is a faith pod." That wasn't on the, on the bingo card. That's correct. We're not on the bingo card. Yep. And I'm like, okay, Charles, what is a faith pod? And he goes, "Man, we do discipleship in here, and we do Bible studies, we do discipleship, and I take seminary classes on the weekends, and we do praise and worship every single morning." And they did. And
he's saying words you don't even know.
Yeah, and I'm like, I have to get out of here immediately. That was my response to that.
Put you in the cult ward.
Get me out of here. You ever seen Happy Gilmore when anyway, there's the scene with the lady in the old folks home where she falls and "Get me out of here." But that's how I felt. I was like, I gotta get out of here. But it's prison, and it turns out you can't get out of there. Who knew? And so I was stuck, and it was a good thing. And Charles really just became my friend. He didn't browbeat me. He didn't, he wasn't over the top. He was my friend, and you get in there, you don't have coffee, you don't have soups, you don't have, sweats, you don't have any of that stuff. And so he gave me, all those things. Like, here, you need some of this, you need some of this. Hey, if you need anything, let me know. So he just became my friend, and his conversation would turn to a subject or a situation. He would kind of Socratically ask me questions.
He would weave Jesus into it.
And he would weave Christ into the questioning and say, "Have you ever thought about this? Have you ever thought about that?" And I remember one of the funniest ones he did was, this is pre-saved Brian in prison, okay? And I'm talking about, girls and having sex with girls and all this other stuff. And Charles just looks at me, he's like, "But wouldn't it be like so much more beautiful if like you just didn't have sex again until you got married?" And I died laughing so hard and just pointing at Charles like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. But you know what? Flash forward, that's exactly what I ended up doing. Yeah. And it was because of that question that happened before I got saved that Charles did. So or go ahead.
No, I got to say, part of my weird resume is that I spent 7 years in full-time ministry with an organization called Young Life.
Yeah.
Which is headquartered in Colorado Springs, by the way. I spent time in Springs because of that. Yeah. Love that city. Probably back when you were actually messing up things. But we called it relational evangelism.
Yeah.
It was earning the right to share your faith is what we called it.
Yeah.
And it was not relationship, with a catch. It was relationship with purpose. And also, oh, by the way, if you don't love Jesus, I'm still going to love you.
Yeah.
So it was true friendship, but we earned the right to share our faith, we called it. And there's a passage of scripture just came to me while we're sitting here talking, hearing you say it. I believe. Hey, all you Rightside ruffians out there, you are listening to Rightside Radio, solid conservative, just plain right. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid conservative, just plain right. Just covering down some major ground across the Southeast U.S. of A. Y'all, I'm talking about this show, this show. It goes from Huntsville back on over to Chattanooga. I'm talking about from Tuscaloosa back on over to Gadsden. All the way down to that lovely little village on the plains that we call, once again, Auburn, that we go, what am I trying to say? Cross the line over there for Fort Benning. This is what happens. I'm looking at the Cracker Barrel article that popped up right in front of me right as I said that, and I thought about Cracker Barrel.
You got to focus.
You know what? I love my audience. How about that? I love them on radio. I love them on podcasting. I love them on live stream. By golly.
I think that's good
How
enough.
you like me now?
I think that's perfect.
Give me some sound effect that you like. I don't care which one it is. Just do me a sound effect. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. How about an hallelujah while we're at it? Thank you. Thank you very much. Lord, Phil must be tired. What's happening right now? I'll tell you what I am tired of, though.
What's that?
Cracker Barrel trying to change. And now it's not. This is okay. So I am totally chasing a rabbit. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. I'll be in the area all day. Thank you. So I don't know if y'all heard. By the way, I'm totally changing the topic. I'm taking a moment of personal privilege. You know why? Because we won. That's why.
We did.
We won. This is like not a little bit, like we won. So for all y'all out there who joined me in the angst with regards to Cracker Barrel going woke and deciding it was going to rebrand itself and use some kind of lukewarm, tepid, kindergartner look designed logo with like this faceless kind of just plain Jane look they were going to remodel all their dining rooms to be, it went away. First, the logo went away.
Yep.
Today, it has been announced Cracker Barrel is now suspending its restaurant remodels after facing public outrage over changes that fans said abandoned the chain's core values. And by the way, they went straight mea culpa on this. They did not try to do the whole, Bud Light, Dylan Mulvaney, we're holding out a little bit longer, try to make it better. No.
Wait. I thought that all of the CEOs, liberal friends, they said it was awesome. And that the folks who didn't like it were just a vocal minority.
All I know is we won. 660 locations around the nation. It says Cracker Barrel issued a statement on its website. It said this, you ready? It said, you have shared your voices in recent weeks. You think? I think we shared them like twice. You have shared your voices in recent weeks, not just on our logo, but also on our restaurants. We're continuing to listen. Today, we're suspending our remodels. If your restaurant, my screen just moved. Hang on a second. If your restaurant hasn't been remodeled, you don't need to worry. It won't be. They said that only 4 of their locations had been remodeled, and they pledged the project will no longer continue. And the remodels dropped all the kitschy American kind of decor they were known for, to go to like what they call it, a minimalist modern look. What a stupid thing to do. You're a Cracker Barrel.
That's kind of like the whole appeal is the nostalgic feel in the restaurant.
That's like saying you went from a barn to like, some kind of like, unique metropolitan. Just no.
Yeah.
Why?
It made it look like a little coffee shop in New York City that liberal, purple-haired people go to discuss their ideologies.
Well, they lost big. They lost real big. And so, yeah, Cracker Barrel's restaurant models were unveiled. The backlash. Everything happened. Everybody was ticked off. The firestorm erupted. Cracker Barrel tried to rebrand all the iconic logo. That didn't go well for them. Anyway, the bottom line is people were saying things like it takes away from our heritage. It's like the old things that the country was founded on are no longer worthwhile anymore. And then it points out that even Cracker Barrel's 93-year-old co-founder, a guy named Tommy Lowe, I didn't know this, slammed the rebrand attempt as, quote, pitiful, and accused the company of throwing money on the street in comments that he made on a local Nashville channel. He told the company, he told the company that he helped found, keep it country. And now it appears they have heeded his advice. I'm going to tell you, that's funny.
It is.
I don't care who you are. That's just funny. But I will give them props. They saw it. They heard it. They stopped it.
Yeah. I mean, but that shows how outspoken a response it was, how quick it was. And I mean, this is something more trivial, but I do think it is an indicator of how much we're winning in terms of the culture battles, because the CEO is saying that everybody I've talked to loves it.
Oh, the feedback's amazing.
And so now she thinks from that everybody nationwide would love it because everybody nationwide thinks how I think. And
get out of your bubble, lady.
She got smacked in the face with the reality of no, majority of the nation is actually courageous enough to say when something they see they don't like, and looks like their values and something like Cracker Barrel is taking a reversal, that they're actually going to speak up and say something about it.
Has there been any talk about her losing her job?
I don't think so. I haven't seen
remember
anything.
her name now, but it's just one of those things that you presided over the biggest debacle. I mean, their market share plummeted for a while, and their parking lots were empty at stores all over the place. and there was this outrage that their loyal base felt betrayed. I'm curious if she's going to lose her job, or maybe they'll just quietly make her the head janitor or something. I don't know what they're going to do, but she's definitely going. I got a call right now with Tom with all the kids in Cracker Barrel. Tom with all the kids. How you doing, buddy?
Hey, Phil.
How you doing, man?
I'm doing well. Yourself?
I'm good. What's on your mind, buddy?
Hey, so Cracker Barrel, it's not just the rebrand. There's a problem with the service that's being provided. My wife and I, on our weekends away, even with all the kids, we try to get away once in a while, and we'd always try and hit up the Cracker Barrel wherever we went. And I got to say that 3 of the 4 last times we've eaten there, the service was poor. They didn't have the advertised specials. They had problems with the menu. The quality of the food was cold or felt like it was microwaved. It just, service is part of that package as well.
Yeah.
You've got to maintain those high standards.
I totally agree. And I hate to brand them in a big way, but I'll tell you, that's been my experience too. Is it used to be, that was the place you went. There were big portions, you felt like you were getting comfort food. You felt like the quality was something that you could sort of expect. And then it just seems like over time, the portions got small, the service got worse. And I will say the breakfast continues to be pretty good, but some of the other meals were the ones that were starting to
That
flag.
was the one.
Yeah. Oh,
breakfast was good. The dinner meals have not been good.
Well, and by the way, can you afford to take all the kids to Cracker Barrel?
Once in a while.
Just make them split pancakes or something. All right, man. Hey, appreciate the call, buddy. Thank you very much.
Not a problem. Talk to you later.
See ya. I saw some text coming in. Lisa from Tanner says, I'm so glad to know there are some conservatives still attending my alma mater and so proud that the young man who took a stand for Christ was very conservative. Texas A&M was very conservative when I was there. But over the last 20 years or so, even it has gone woke. We must fervently pray for our young people. It's such a diverse society in which to become adults. It really is. And I realize that every generation has their own things to overcome. And there are going to be places, even pockets within the United States are going to have differences. But I do feel like culture has become far more difficult to navigate than it used to be, in part because there has been a removal of what I would call some of the more endearing and long-lasting and enduring principles, one of which is faith in the public square. Luann from Huntsville says, so here's talking about something serious, glancing at the monitor. Oops, squirrel. Let's talk about Cracker Barrel. What did I do? Was she making fun of me? What just happened?
I think she said she liked that.
Oh,
yeah.
Thanks. Appreciate it. Squirrel. All right. JT Lacey Springs says, with all the proclamations of weapon control, common sense is pushed aside with knee-jerk ideas. Too often that's true. And he points out a meme that, one of these is a murder weapon, and the other 400 cases each year can be purchased without a background check. The other's an AR-15. Wow.
It's got a hammer and an AR.
A hammer and an AR, yeah. And then Jeff from Indiana, who we might be hearing from in a minute, says, hey, Phil, there's a similar place to the Bible Museum in Kentucky called the Creation Museum. Here's a link to it. Thank you, brother. Appreciate that very much. I'll tell you the one I want to go see, too, is the Ark Museum. You seen that?
I have not, no.
I've heard that's amazing.
Yeah.
Great place.
Where's that at? Is that in a...
Oh, it's in the Midwest. I got to look it up and see. But anyway. All right, JP, take me to a break, brother. We'll take that last break of the day. We'll come right back, and we'll get some more feedback from you guys and head ourselves into the house. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back. First Thessalonians says, because we loved you so much, we were content not just to share the gospel, but our very lives as well.
Yeah.
Meaning the gospel's really important, but I'm even going to share who I am in a relationship with you. That's where Charles was, it sounds like.
Yep, 100%.
Very cool. All right, so you're hanging out with Charles.
Hanging out with Charles. We're at Walsenburg about a year in. I don't remember exactly how it breaks down. He gets shipped to Sterling Correctional Facility. So I'm there on my own. Huerfano County Correctional Center in Walsenburg was a private prison. So it's like Corporations Correction of America, or I guess they call it some other company now, Core Civic. It was one of those prisons, and it got shut down. And so I get moved to Benton County, which is another Core Civic prison. It was Corrections Corporation of America at the time. I'm there for 6 months, and then they moved me to Canyon City, to Arrowhead Correctional Center, which is like Camp Cupcake. Okay. And so they moved me to Camp Cupcake, and they didn't know they made a mistake with my sentence and how much time I have. I'm not allowed to be at Camp Cupcake, right? I'm not supposed to be. And I'm there for like 2 months, and it's up in the mountains in Canyon City, Colorado. I'm like, man, I can get used to this. It was like God gave me a little vacation. And then once they figured it out, they ended up shipping me to Sterling Correctional Facility. I walk out on the yard at Sterling Correctional Facility, which is a massive prison, right? There's 4 separate yards, so I didn't have to land on the yard with him. But I walk out on they call it the 20s yard where I was, and boom, there's Charles.
How about that?
Right away. So
back together again.
Yeah.
Pick up where you left off.
Yeah, and he was a softball coach. That was his way of doing evangelism. He put together a softball team, and it was like, is it? I remember how shocked I was when I walked into a medium security prison. So there's like killers and everything in this prison, and there's a softball team which requires these things called metal bats. I'm like, they have metal bats in prison? Like, that seems counterintuitive.
Who thought this was okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he did. He coached a softball team, and I was the third baseman, and you know, that was his way that he would evangelize guys. And so I get to Sterling, he's like, hey, what was great about Sterling is they had grass. So I was excited to play softball there, but that's neither here nor there. And so he's like, man, you want to play softball again? Yeah. So he's just doing the same thing, friends, ministering, planting seeds. And he goes, man, Brian, you got parole coming up in a couple of years. You really need to get you some certificates for the parole board. I'm like, great. And he's like, well, I'm the chaplain's assistant. I can get you into some programs. And the chaplain's office was over all the programs, secular or otherwise. I'm like, cool, yeah, get me in. And he gets me into them, and it's they're faith-based programs.
Ah.
And so I got in there, and I'm like, Charles. So I get
snuck
in.
that gospel in on you again.
He did. And but it was really interesting. And I get in there, and the first program was like Kumbaya, come as you are. You know, it was very, you know, it was not very high theology. It was not rigorous. It was just like, we want to love on you. But in that program, there was like 5 or 6 other guys that were like Charles, guys who'd been down for like 20 years that were men, and they were steeped in the word. And I got around those guys, and I'm just like, geez, like I'm drawn to this, but I can't admit it. And so that program ends, and I went to Charles. I'm like, hey man, I think I need some more certificates for the parole board. And he's like, okay,
wink, wink, nod, nod.
And so he gets me into this next one. Well, it was very high theology, and it was very rigorous, and it was very much, this is what the Word of God says. It's called The Truth Project with Dr. Del Tackett, which is Christian Worldview and Apologetics.
I got it written down. I was going to ask you about it.
So good. Like, I highly recommend everything Del Tackett does. Everyone should just go and look at all of it. I mean, he did Answers in Genesis. He does The Truth Project. He's got, you know, so many great things. Watch, you know, but what this one is Christian Worldview and Apologetics. You come in, you watch an hour-long video, and then you have an hour-long table discussion afterwards. And I would watch the hour-long video that was, you know, very, this is what the Word of God says, this is this, but it's like applying it to creation and politics and culture. And it was just, it was
giving you a base.
Yeah. And it was so good. Yeah, so good. But when you're not a Christian, it's not so good, right? And so I'm like, this is bullcrap. I hate this. You guys are stupid. And I did. I told those guys at the table, if you believe this crap, you guys are idiots. You're stupid. And I always tell people, it's like, just because they're Christians doesn't mean they're not convicts, okay? And so, like, you tell someone, even us, like, if someone came up and, like, put their finger in our face and said, you're stupid for believing Jesus, I don't know. I hope that I wouldn't punch him in the face, right? But so here I am in prison doing just that, and Charles is just done. He's just, like, throwing his hands in the air. He's like, oh, my gosh. And so this goes on for, like, 2 or 3 weeks where I'm, like, full tilt arguing with these guys. And we walk back to the unit, and you know, so here's the education building, our unit's over here, and there's a sidewalk that you got to walk around like that. And we're walking back, and we get to about right here, and Charles just looks over at me, and he says, Brian, why don't you give him a chance? Why don't you give him a chance? Jesus being to give him a chance, right? And for whatever reason, in God's sovereignty, as I look at it, that was the moment, okay? And all my guard, all my, you know, defensive mechanisms,
And we are back. Phil Williams, Right Side Radio, solid, conservative, and just plain right. Just, I mean, like, man, just making common sense like a superpower, y'all. Absolutely a superpower. Hey, by the way, we still got some of those bin shot glasses in our Right Side merch store. If you want to check it out, go to rightsidemedia.org. These are the custom limited edition bin shot glasses made by a company called Bin Shot just for us. They're highball glasses. The engraved Right Side Media logo with the words bulletproof influence underneath it. And then there's an embedded 308 round in the side of the glass. Let me just encourage you, go check it out if nothing else. Go to rightsidemedia.org, rightsidemedia.org, go to the shop tab and just take a look at these glasses. We do have a limited run of these still left. And maybe we'll get another round of them sometime soon, but we have actually sold out once, got another round. They're custom made for us and they are so cool, along with other things like t-shirts, hats, and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, go check it out, rightsidemedia.org. Check out the shop tab and it's all there. By the way, the lovely Charlene just texted in and reminded me that she being a native Kentuckian, that the Ark Museum is in Kentucky.
Yeah, we got some text, some people saying that as well. Yeah, I've never seen it either. Sounds pretty cool.
Yeah, it's very cool. And it's full size. It's a full size mock-up of the Ark. Yeah, same from JD from Priceville, TL from Huntsville, who says the Ark encounter is actually amazing. Dave from Capshaw says, my experience with Cracker Barrel in Athens has always been positive. The problems Tom mentions make me wonder if the problems some have experienced maybe resulted from things like still recovering from COVID shutdowns or whatever else. Maybe, and that may be true. I think it's also a local management. Management can make a big difference. How you manage a restaurant makes a big difference. And then John from Huntsville has the grades in. He says, JP gets an A double plus for his brilliant performance. However, Phil's performance is more brilliant. Wow, more brilliant.
I think it's because I said the word Saban maybe earlier.
So I got an A triple plus. Obviously, today's winner. Congratulations, John. Thank you. Appreciate you as always. I'm going to the phones. Is he on there? Is Jeff on there? Jeff Rowe from Indiana. Hey, buddy, how are you?
I'm doing real good. I'm not too far out of Owensboro, Kentucky right now.
Wow. You way on up there. You getting up towards the Ark Museum region, aren't you?
Yeah, well, no, I'm the other direction. I'm about Owensboro's about 100 miles west of Louisville, Kentucky.
I got you.
On the Ohio River, yeah.
Well, good, man. I tell you what, though,
But,
I don't know what the weather's been like you are, but it's been like spot on here. It's been perfect. So I hope you've had the day for driving.
Showing 85 degrees right now.
Listen,
sunny.
I could do more of this all the time. What's on your mind, man? We talked about the crime buster stuff. We talked about the appeal to heaven. What's your thought?
Yeah. The Creation Museum and the Ark is basically sister museums. They're all up there close to Florence, Kentucky, which is kind of a suburb of Cincinnati.
Yeah. Okay.
On Kentucky side.
You've been there?
They're both pretty close. Yeah, I've been to Creation. I haven't been to the Ark yet.
That's cool. That's one that I want to take the grandkids. They need to be a little bit older, but I want to take them and then and just wow them with it.
There you go. It's well worth the trip.
Absolutely.
But talking about this, kind of touched on this yesterday with the women. This guy that stabbed this girl on the train. We got these judges and everything that's either the municipal judges or they're state or federal. I guess some of them would be federal, I think. But we need to put a law in place where these people can't be just let go. I think we need to come up with a federal law that they can be once you commit 3 violent felonies with bodily injury or something like that. That 33 strikes and you're out. You're going to federal pen for life.
Well, yeah, and I think that one of the first things they could do is there's a thing called mandatory minimum sentencing, and a lot of jurisdictions don't do that. Mandatory minimum sentencing means you're not going to get away with a slap on the wrist or have some DA who can give you a lighter sentence than you should because there's a mandatory minimum. The other thing is getting rid of cashless bail. I mean, you gotta get away from that. That's not. There's no such thing as cashless bail. That's called get out of jail free. That's what that is. There's no skin in the game.
And there's some way that you can charge them federally for some of these crimes and everything, where
there has to be what's known as there has to be what's called a federal nexus. They can't just like create one. They can't do an Alvin Bragg and just create something out of the thin air. But in this case, like this guy who stabbed the young lady on the train, there is actually a crime for violence on mass transit, which is a federal crime. And so the feds have now swooped in and said, we'll take it from here. But if it had been a purely state law issue, then we would be having no choice but to leave it at the state level. And then you're subject to whatever the state laws are. What I want to see, though, is more mandatory minimum sentencing, get rid of cashless bail. And then you're right. If there had been a series of crimes, they should have no right to bail. They should, the discretion should be removed from the judge, because right now a lot of them are just like getting out because the judge doesn't want to deal with it, or just, he or she's too soft on crime.
Yeah, I mean, I could see if this was this guy's first or second time, but when you take 14 times and everything, and you're basically let loose with a promise to come back, I mean, like I say, if you laid a rake in your yard and somebody just happened to walk on your property and got injured on it, you'd be sued liably and for negligence. And I think some of these judges, there should be a way to sue some of these judges for negligence, because, I mean, it's what they're doing is super, super dangerous. I mean, it doesn't take but 1.5 cents to know that.
Yeah, it doesn't. And then, but it's gonna take, and I don't know what every venue has. In Alabama, we elect our judges. On the federal district court bench, they are actually appointed and confirmed by the Senate. But it's going to take people being willing to speak up and say, we want judges who will enforce the law. We want DAs who will prosecute the law. And we want city councils who will upfund our police and put our streets back in the right order. That's what's going to happen, man.
Well, and I'll say this too. Randy Fine, a representative, has actually said he's going to introduce legislation to hold judges accountable when violent repeat offenders they release commit new crimes. So who knows, what that looks like, but there may be legislation coming forward that judges can be held accountable.
He's a new congressman from Florida, right?
Yes.
Yeah. We'll see. I don't know. I don't know how they can do that legislatively, but that's the only way they can do it is legislating it. All right. Well, brother, go ahead. No, you're done. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that another thing about the prosecutors. I mean, legally, I guess a prosecutor can let you get away with murder if he chooses not to prosecute you.
Well,
so I mean, we need to have a way to force prosecutors to actually prosecute crimes.
Like we do, and one of the things that I did see, I'm glad to see that the current Department of Justice is investigating things. Like, for instance, we have situations where there are paid protesters who travel around the nation to help stir up these ICE riots and all that kind of stuff. Well, we know that George Soros has been funding some of those. The same George Soros who funded some of these DAs around the nation who were soft on crime is up funding. So I think there needs to be investigation into, at the very least, if you're gonna pay the money, be willing to take the social pressure that comes from people wanting to know why you did it. But yeah. All right, brother. Hey, we got music about to play, so you be safe on the road. We'll talk at you tomorrow. All right.
All right, buddy. You have a good one.
All right, man. You too. All right, it's been a good show. I got 2 out of 3 dippers. 2 out of 3.
Yeah, but they were meaty. They were a lot.
They were, and we got a lot done, even without like being accused of making sandwiches and that kind of stuff.
There was no hot flash news today.
There was no hot flash news,
so.
but that doesn't matter. We got dippered and the whole thing, and we even chased a squirrel and talked about Cracker Barrel.
Yep, fit that in there as well.
All right, you guys, listen. Tomorrow's Hump Day. You're halfway to the weekend. Y'all stay tuned, and don't forget, as always, I say it and I mean it. There are more of us than there are of them. God is still on his throne. Y'all stay in the fight. We'll see you tomorrow.